Hello. I think the chat might be empty right now because I don't usually stream at this point. But here I am. How's it going? I'll be talking to Econoboi again in just a minute. I know you guys want me to go real hard on him, but I'm not gonna. I actually like him quite a bit. He seems to be a nice fella. I think I agree with him more than I disagree. We might have some reasonably serious disagreements, but that doesn't mean that we have to, hate each other. I think that it is reasonable for us to just discuss things. Also, he's more educated on econ than me. So I don't mind being taught certain things. Here, let me post the links everywhere, okay? Here we go. Talking to Econoboi again. Right now. Click it. Boom. And I'll drop this on Facebook, on Twitter, on Minds, on Gab, on Parler. I have all of them. And on Getter. That's the situation, guys. So, how is everyone doing? Come on. Come on. Post. I'm probably going to have to get into fucking Instagram and TikTok. Ugh. I hate those platforms. Fucking Zoomer platforms. But that's where the energy seems to be shifting away right now, so I guess that is the situation. Oh, I should put Econoboi's actual channel in the description, shouldn't I? I like how his Twitter comes up way more than his YouTube. Okay. Yeah, I'll put it in the description right here. Econoboi. Econoboi is a sockdem. So he's not a communist, not a socialist, but he is like a welfare capitalist. Capitalism plus safety nets. Like Nordic model stuff. All right, I think we're good to go, eh? I know you guys don't like them. May I bring out an actual ANCAP source for you to talk about? Go ahead. Oh, by the way, first of all, everyone who's right here, you just missed a stream that I did. It's on the gaming channel. Make sure you hit up the gaming channel. I will pin it. I'll pin it right there. It's pinned. I just streamed for like 3 hours playing the god-awful fucking GameCube game, Shadow the Hedgehog. It was fucking disgusting. But I streamed it. I beat it. It was fun. And please consider following that channel, even if you don't want to watch it. It's a great way to give a $5 recurring monthly tip using Twitch's sub button. And if you have Amazon Prime, well, if that's the case, you can actually just sub anyway. Every Amazon Prime account comes with one free sub. So, you can do that if you like. Anyway, we're going to, I will wait for Isaac Clarke to drop his source, since he really wants this to be about ANCAP shit. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about ANCAP shit, guys. But nonetheless, once he drops the source, I'll call Econoboi. I'll just tell him 30 seconds. Shadow the Hedgehog, yes. We played yesterday. The new Kirby game came out. The Kirby in the Kirby in the Forbidden World? We played that game. It was actually pretty fun. Like, it was a fun game. I enjoyed it. We beat Skyward Sword on Tuesday. We beat Mass Effect 3 on Monday. A whole bunch of new games going to be starting on the gaming channel. I think we might start Okami HD next week. I'm sure we'll talk about Destiny getting banned. I'm sure we will talk about Destiny getting banned. Call him out on the bank runs don't happen anymore line. Yeah, ANCAP stuff is pretty dumb in my opinion. I'm not an ANCAP. I can understand and appreciate the libertarian position, but it's not the whole of economics. They have good critiques, but not necessarily good solutions for those critiques. Ow, my hand hurts. Jesus. We have been playing Elden Ring as well. It's a pretty fun game. Ow, Jesus. Jeez. Shane is the best and great. Well, we're not gonna watch a YouTube video. I don't think. I thought you could bring up a point or a talking or something. Okay, here. I'll just okay. I'll call you now. Now, here. Let's give him a ring. What happens if I press the call button? Hold on. I'll turn on my desktop audio. God damn it! Move out of the way, cable. Jesus. Oh, I do want to play the Ori games. The Ori games look good. Okay, let's start this. Where is it? Start voice call. Boop. It's ringing.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Very good. How about you?
You know, it's going all right. It's been a good stream so far, just hanging with chat a little bit.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that you were... I thought we were starting at the same time. I would have come home early. Or been here earlier, rather.
No, yeah, it's not... Don't worry about that. It's... I always start a little bit early to hang out with chat and have just a good old time.
Okay. Oh, call on. Someone in my chat already says, shouldn't I be in EFAP? Yeah, I got invited to EFAP tonight, but I also had to do this with you. So, I'm doing both streams.
What's that?
You don't know what EFAP is?
I don't. It sounds weird.
Okay. Have you heard of Mauler? The YouTuber Mauler?
I haven't. I don't know who these people are.
I'll post you it. So this is his channel. And every Saturday night, he does an 8-hour stream called EFAP.
Well, what's it about?
Anything. It's a variety stream. It's about anything. Whatever topic they choose. Sometimes it's about pop culture. Sometimes it's about drama. Sometimes it's about politics. It can be about anything. But they choose a topic. They line up guests for that topic. And then they stream. And it's usually a pretty popular stream. They generally get between 4,000 and 8,000 people watching.
Okay.
When the stream kicks in. Yeah, they do it. They do it every Saturday night. I already told Mauler to invite you sometime if they have an economics topic.
They ever talk economics? Seems like Mauler does film reviews.
He does do a fair amount of those, yes.
Well, I congratulate him on that. I've thought about doing a number of reviews myself one of these days.
Oh, really? Are you going to do the economics of Star Wars or something?
No, just doing regular old reviews because I've got some strong opinions on certain pieces of media that people are frankly just objectively wrong about. Dev,
objectively,
I might want to talk about it one day.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, give me an example. I'm kind of curious.
You know, when The Last of Us 2 came out, I don't play. I don't really play a lot of video games because I'm lazy and don't have. I'm both lazy and don't have the time. So,
yeah, isn't that the lazy person's hobby is video games?
Well, kind of, yes, but I mean, with narrative-driven video games, you have to dedicate a pretty good amount of time to it, and whereas I really just like the narrative, right? And so, for instance, for The Last of Us 2, I just looked up the story of The Last of Us 2 and just watched the 10-hour story version of it. And,
all the cutscenes.
Well, the cutscenes and the dialogue and stuff, you absorb all the story. The gameplay, I'm not as focused on because obviously I'm not playing, and also it's I just like the story of The Last of Us. So I did that, and I came away from The Last of Us 2 and I was like, Last of Us 2, this is a masterpiece and it's better than the first game. That was like my initial takeaway. And I do what most people do, which is, I go online and I start reading like, what the community thinks of the game and all that stuff. And it seemed like most people were positive on it, but then there was like this vocal minority of people who it's like, oh my God, this and that, and fucking there was a trans character, and oh my, can you believe it? And it's like, God damn, and there was a girl with muscles, like, oh my God, like, really? These are your fucking criticism? You gotta be
Well,
shitting me. This is a great game.
To be fair, I didn't like Last of Us 2. But the reason that it wasn't had to do anything with that, I don't care about muscle women, I don't care about trans characters, none of that bothers me. I didn't like Last of Us 2 because they basically make you play as emotionally what you feel like is the villain for half the game.
That's what I loved about it.
Maybe
it was
but like
so creative.
Maybe so, but at the same time, I didn't want to play as that character. I was like, part of me just intuitively would rather put the game down than play as a character that I actively didn't like, and I didn't feel like that the story should be trying to make me sympathize with.
Look, here's what I think. Here's what I think the genius of The Last of Us 2 is. Okay, over the course, because games, games are longer than movies, right? I mean, the average narrative-driven game, you're gonna have 10, 12 hours of narrative, right? The average movie is maybe 2 hours.
Have you seen Metal Gear Solid 4? It has 60 hours of cutscenes.
That's what I'm saying. Like games, there's just a lot more. Like there's a lot more story in games a lot of the times, right? And it can be a slower burn. And I think that the genius of The Last of Us 2 is that they pace the game really well. And I think that the genius of it is exactly this, right? Is that slowly, in my mind, I think that what they're trying to get you to do is to realize, not just based on the actions of the characters in Last of Us 2, but also based on the actions of the characters in Last of Us 1, you're slowly realizing, like, oh, like, it's not Abby who's the bad guy. She's actually the good guy in the story. And it's really Ellie who's the bad guy, especially at the very end, right? Like, the roles have completely reversed. And that's what I really liked about The Last of Us 2. And you come to that slow realization over time that everything's a little bit gray. But really, it seems like Ellie's she's subsumed the role of the villain at the end. And certainly Abby is not the villain by the end of the show. And I thought that was really, really creative. I thought they handled it well. I can understand, like, from my perspective, I never played the game. Like, I never played as Abby. So I can understand why some people are like, oh, I don't want to play as Abby because I hate her for the first, like, 8 hours of the game or whatever it is. So I can see that being a little bit rough, whereas I just, like, watched it. So I can understand that. But again, I guess I am talking purely about the narrative and not, the gameplay.
Yeah, this is why I think, like, the gaming is a different medium than just watching a narrative, because you have to engage with it in some way, and you can feel different about it by engaging.
Hold on, Dev. Luke says Ellie is not the good guy at the end of fucking Last of Us 2. You're wrong. Okay, you're wrong, sir.
Are you watching my chat too? Or is he in your chat saying the same thing?
No, I'm watching both chats. Oh. You're wrong. It's not true. By the end, look, Ellie literally tries to murder a fucking emaciated, damn near dead Abby. For what crime did Abby commit? She killed the guy that brutally murdered her dad. Wow, what a horrible person Abby is. And then Ellie comes back, gets 2 of her fucking fingers bitten off by an emaciated Abby at the very end, damn near drowns her to death. Okay? No, like, I think Abby at the end of the game is certainly acting like the bad guy. And while Abby comes to some character development at the very end, I think that that's, to me, the genius of Last of Us 2. And I hope that Last of Us... hopefully, if there is a Last of Us 3, it'd be interesting to see what they follow. I think narratively, the one criticism of The Last of Us 2 that I think is legitimate is, like, the quick travel just seems a little absurd, right? So, like, we've got a scenario where, like, civil society's collapsed, and Abby's like, I gotta go to fucking San Diego from Wyoming, and it's just like, oh, she's just there. Like, the next scene, she's there, and it's like, I'm pretty sure that traveling, 1,000 miles or however fucking long that is, I'm pretty sure that would be like its own game. That would be like its own story, probably. That's quite a perilous journey, if I had to guess. But So not that there's no criticisms of The Last of Us 2, but I think that there are certainly there's certainly more good than bad for Last of Us 2, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. See, I understand your point. I get it. It's just that also, I think if you want to do the both sides are bad, everyone has their own kind of point of view story, a much better iteration of that story is Attack on Titan. It's the same theme, but you can actually see both sides come to their evil completion. And it's kind of nice in that way.
I haven't seen Attack on Titan.
No?
To be fair.
Okay.
Never seen it.
Well, I'm not going to spoil anything. Well, no, I am going to spoil a little bit, so you can turn this off for a minute or two. But without spoiling too much, there is an oppressed minority who, in the past, they were the oppressors of a different minority. And so that different minority now has a world hegemon that wants to keep oppressing this oppressed minority for historical reasons. And then this oppressed minority basically gains the power equivalent of nuclear weapons and says, since you're just going to murder us all, we'll kill all of you too. And so both sides end up having their reasons to want to absolutely exterminate the other side. And they're actually pretty good reasons, but you still shouldn't exterminate anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like extermination is probably pretty much always bad. Even the Jedi exterminated the Sith at one point. It was terrible.
Mm.
You didn't hear about
that? I do recall Sargon at one point saying that like the Sith were actually the good guys.
Well,
like,
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm referring. I don't think it was legend. I think it is canon. There was a part in the Jedi lore where, so Sith originally came from a planet, like from the Sith planet or whatever it is. And
yeah.
Basically, the Jedi and the ancient Jedi had an opportunity to basically massacre like the whole entire population of the people on this planet, and they did. Like they committed a Holocaust basically to try and get rid of the dark side, and it didn't work, obviously. So that was it's a pretty dark moment in Jedi history.
Yeah, sounds like it. To be fair, though, as soon as Disney got involved, I kind of stopped caring about Star Wars. It's not very good.
Oh man, I'm really excited for it. I mean, The Mandalorian's really good.
Okay, fair enough.
I think
Mandalorian season 1 very good. Yes. Season 2 so.
Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan TV. I don't know if I've ever been as hyped for anything, frankly, than the Obi-Wan TV series. I think a lot of people are hyped as fuck about it.
It looks pretty good. I have my doubts, but if The Mandalorian season 1 was good, maybe this will be good too. So, who knows, right? The Book of Boba Fett was absolute garbage. Like that was terrible. It was a terrible show.
Yeah, that was like, I think that there's a guy called Captain Midnight, and he did a review of Boba Fett, and he called it painful mediocrity. And that's kind of how I feel, where it's like, I think that from the outside looking in, Boba Fett is an okay TV show, but people weren't expecting an okay TV show. They were expecting like a really, 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 really good TV show, and that's just not what they got.
Yes, yes.
And the 2 Mandalorian episodes within the Boba Fett show were pretty good, though.
That's the worst part, is that it's not supposed to be. God damn it! It wasn't supposed to be a show where the Mandalorian comes in and steals the clout from the title character and then carries the show when the title character is like beloved.
I think one of the problems is that they should have recast. I understand that it's cool that you've got like the original actor for the clones playing Boba Fett, but it's like, dude, Boba Fett was never like a fat old guy. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't. He was never like a bulky, fat old guy. You know what I mean? At least that's not how he was played, right? Like the dude in the suit's clearly like a 30-year-old dude in the original trilogy, and he also wasn't a good guy. I mean, that was like one of the appeals of Boba Fett was like, oh, this is going to be a show following like a bad guy, right? And it's they kind of just. I mean, they basically just got rid of that entirely in terms of their storyline. One thing that I thought was interesting was his Boba Fett's sidekick, that lady. She's like 60 years old. I didn't
Fennec?
realize how old she was. Yeah. She's like a surprisingly old actress, and she moves way better than like the actor that plays Boba Fett. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that they should have just recast Boba Fett with
They,
just like a younger guy,
they,
basically. I
they
think
should
that
have
would have
grabbed
solved
his
a good
son.
amount of problems.
You remember in
Oh,
episode 2 there was the kid? Maybe he's like old enough now.
well, I mean, he's definitely like got to be like 40 years old, if I had to guess.
Well, no, hold on.
Yeah,
Hold
I mean,
on.
maybe that would have been a good idea.
In episode 2 there was the young Boba Fett. He was like what 5 or 6 or 8 years old or something. What would he be now? 25?
Oh, you're right. You're right. Yeah, he's like in his early 20s. Yeah. Well, the problem is that clones age at twice the rate as regular people. So you'd have to find someone who was like looked relatively old, right? Or like a little bit more grizzled, right? But it's it's just that the guy that they got was just, I mean, he's just out of shape basically, right?
I know all about being out of shape.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't really work. I think that what you need you need an agile, like Boba Fett's not like, he's not like the Peacemaker from he's not a bulky big like person, right? He's a pretty slender guy in the original trilogy, and it I don't know.
Yeah, if you see like you go back and see in like episode 5, I think, and he's hanging out in the background. He's really skinny.
Yeah, he's a really slender guy, and so I think Boba Fett was unaltered. I mean, what does that mean? Oh, Boba Fett ages normally. Well, okay, if that's the case, then yeah, you could have cast a 40-year-old dude like Pedro Pascal kind of guy to play Boba Fett, and it sounds like that would have worked out just fine. So yeah, but again, I understand. I understand it's cool that like, oh, the original guy that plays the clones is now playing Boba. I mean, I get it, right? I do get that, but it's just I just don't think it works here. That's one thing I'm not looking forward to with The Mandalorian is like, I hope that they just recast that lady, the lady that got kicked off the show.
Gina Serrano?
Yeah, because I feel like her character seems important to the story, and I feel like I think what unfortunately what's going to happen is one of two things. She's either going to conveniently never show up again, or it's going to be like, did you hear Gina got killed in a fucking gang attack, and we've got to do that for one episode? And it's like, okay, like whatever, dude. I can see what's going on here. Just recast her. Just pick someone else to play her. You know?
Shows you just say like she went off to do something else. Like it's a big galaxy. She can go somewhere else. Okay, the chat keeps. Yeah. I gotta point this out real quick. Listen, okay, the EFAP thing. All right. Both Econoboi and EFAP wanted me on at the same time, but you don't go for like 10 hours. So I'm gonna hang out with you for a few hours, Econoboi, probably about 2 hours, I think, and then I'll drop over to EFAP. Guests on EFAP aren't expected to stay the whole time anyway, because they do like 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour shows, so it's fine. You can drop in and out whenever you want.
All right, well let's do it. Dev, you wanted to talk about economics. Let's talk
about Destiny's banning. That's the hot topic right now.
Oh, you want to? Let's do it.
Actually, I don't. We can talk whatever you want. I don't care. Honestly, I just enjoy talking to you. I enjoy talking to you because you are a friendly person, and there's not many of those kicking around the internet these days.
I'm a little too friendly to you, according to some people in my YouTube comments. I should be a little bit harder on you. You're one of these fascist guys, and I need to call you out.
Shit. All right, go ahead. Do it.
I don't know what to. People said. I mean, the thing is, people were saying that, but they didn't link me anything to, to show that, right? I mean, like for instance, if you were to like, if it was like, hey, don't talk to, what's the guy's name? What's that weird ass fucking French Canadian guy's name?
Garapi.
The JF. Yeah. If it was like, hey, don't talk to JF. This guy's weird as fuck. You could link me many things that would show that, right?
Yes.
But I don't know, with you, it was just like, oh, he's like an old anti-SJW guy, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't agree with most of that stuff, but I mean, is that like, he's not like a Nazi from what I was able to find. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't understand what the big thing was, but that's just me, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's because, for a long time ago, I was nominally center left, but I've always been pretty anti-socialist. And it's my experience. This actually ties into, I think, to the Destiny banning. I think the reason that they're going so hard on Destiny is not just because of the alleged transphobia. There doesn't seem to be much transphobia there, by the way, but not just because of that, and not just because of I forgot the other thing that I was going to say actually. So, oops, that's out of my head. But basically, the reason that they're going after Destiny right now seems to be that he's a reasonably far left person who is still like anti-socialist to the point that he cannot be turned into a socialist. Because I think a lot of socialists, by the way, this is like mostly online discourse we're talking here. This is not real life politics. But I think most online socialists, they view people like you, they view people who are sock dems, as people who just need to be a little bit indoctrinated, and you'll become good proper socialists. You are comrades who don't know it yet. And then you get someone like Destiny.
I guess I don't know.
Well, I'll be real quick. You get someone like Destiny, who is like, yeah, I mean, I still like welfare capitalism, but fuck all the socialist stuff. And I think when they realize that you can't turn someone like that, they get really fucking angry. And I think they've just been waiting for any reason to basically take Destiny down. And it's my experience because I generally agree with a lot of the things that Destiny says. I don't mind the idea of welfare capitalism either. That I think that's where a lot of the he's a Nazi comes from, even though I'm not really that right leaning at all.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's most of your anti-SJW stuff, right? I mean, that's where people get the. I mean, like obviously you have some, some somewhat conservative viewpoints, and
Yeah, somewhat.
I think
Yeah.
that's where.
Yeah.
I think that's where most people get, get the Nazi stuff. I just think that, like, is it in my opinion, like, is it wrong to criticize progressive sort of liberal social ideology? I mean, yeah, right. I mean, is like, are conservative social beliefs wrong, and are they like bad? I mean, I would say yes to those questions, but like, is someone who believes in those things like a fascist or a Nazi? I'm not sure I could really make that leap, right? It just seems like those terms should be, sort of cordoned off to the to the more like extremist versions of those beliefs, right? I mean, it's one thing to be like, yeah, I believe in a whatever, two parents and a kid style household, and it's another thing to be like, oh yes, we should kill all the gay people. It's like, okay, well, obviously these are very different people, but if you call them both Nazis, it kind of Nazi doesn't really seem to mean a lot at that point, right? So
yeah, I know what you mean, but I mean, it seems to not have meant a lot to people on the extreme end of the left for a while. I mean, okay, you know about the social fascism stuff then, because that was it by the Second or Third International? That was the communist push to make the sock dems out to be fascists.
I don't know. I mean, you're a little bit better with the history stuff than I am. I just talk economics.
Right. Here, let me just pull it up real quick. I just real quickly because it's a very short Wikipedia page. I like being a Wikipedia warrior because you know what? People shit on Wikipedia all the time, but there's actually reasonably good information on there. And if you don't like Wikipedia, just go to the sources that they use. Just go to the article, go to the books, whatever. You can see it yourself. Right. So, social fascism was a theory that was supported by the Communist International and affiliated communist parties in the early 1930s that held that social democracy was a variant of fascism because it stood in the way of a dictatorship of the proletariat in addition to a shared corporatist economic model. So, there's always been this kind of idea among people who are really far left that sock dems, they just enable fascism. I think it's a ridiculous idea, but it seems to be something that people on the extreme left believe. I think there's something to it.
I guess so.
I mean, come on. When I say I think there's something to it, I don't mean that it's true. I mean that some people today still believe it is what I'm talking about. I don't think it's true at all.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of people that make, I mean, I don't know, to me, pretty boneheaded arguments about the ideologies of others and also the like extrapolations of those ideologies, right? So I just,
Yes.
you know, I just, I just think there's a lot of social progress that's been happening throughout time. There's obviously times when we have pushback, like obviously right now with all the trans sports stuff. But I don't know. It seems like the culture war is conservatives have like perpetually lost every culture war they've ever fought, right? So um, it
That is
doesn't.
true. That's true. And here's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, to go back a topic or two, I don't know if I would necessarily agree with your characterization of me. I think one can be like, uh, an anti woke person and still be fine with some forms of like social democratic economics. It doesn't make you a conservative necessarily. I think there are definitely just reasonable people, even like unaligned people or like non-political people who are like who look at some of the things that are happening, especially in the terminally online spaces, and they go like, what is this? Like, what is this insanity that's currently gripping people who spend too much time on Twitter? I don't think it's
Well, yeah. When I
a
say
uniquely
conservative,
conservative phenomenon.
well, no. When I say conservative, I'm talking about social beliefs and stuff like that. I mean, obviously, the anti-SJW crowd was almost entirely unconcerned with economics.
Hmm.
It was just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this girl with pink hair is saying you should, this and that about social. And it's like, okay, I mean, I don't, that was a lot of what the argument seemed to be, was basically people being woke and like that's so dumb, this and that, all this kind of stuff. Like there was a lot of careers that respond off of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is where like Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, Lauren Southern, like all these people basically respond off of that same sort of 2014, 2015 original sort of anti-SJW crowd, which was mostly concerned about like personal relationships, how those are governed. Immigration was a big one, and you could say like national sovereignty to a certain extent. Like there was a big like Brexit sort of isolationist kick to a lot of the anti-SJW crowd, and uh, like oppression was a big thing. Like let's talk about like what does rape culture mean? What does it mean to be systemically oppressed? Right. I mean, these were all sort of the concerns. It was almost never the case where you heard. I mean, Ben Shapiro would get into it a little bit, but I mean, most of them, like it's pretty rare to hear that crowd talk about economic issues, right? So when I say conservative, it's like it's pretty segregated to the pretty much the social beliefs of that movement at the time.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. I think the reason that that movement came about, and I do think it came about from people who were like either politically unaligned or like disaffected people who were center left, not necessarily conservatives. I think a lot of them became conservatives over time. It's because I don't know exactly how old you are, but I think you're a little bit younger than me. I remember that the promise of the '90s was that racism was racism no matter who you were racist towards, and all forms of racism were bad. Nobody should be racist. There might be historical injustices, but that doesn't justify being racist towards someone who's white, for example. Sexism against men, same thing. And yet, so like people like me who grew up in the '90s, we were kind of we were in this culture of I guess almost, it's like a quasi fairness in a sense. I'm not saying that it was always fair all across the board. There were obviously still problems, but the idea was that at least on an individual level, you shouldn't treat somebody differently because of their skin color, even if you were black and they were white. Reverse racism is still bad. And then we hit, say, the 2010s, and there seemed to be a lot of people who were online saying, no, that doesn't matter. Now it's privilege plus power. And people were like, what the fuck happened? Like, what the fuck
Well, no,
happened, dude?
no. I think that this is where we get into like Twitter sniping and stuff like that, where like you could probably, I mean, I don't know, you can find crazy people on Twitter saying all kinds of crazy shit. Like there was, I mean, for God's sakes, yesterday, I think it was like not yesterday literally, but I think it was a day or two ago when Marjorie Taylor Greene, who tweeted, I think he tweeted, oh God, she literally tweeted something like, Joe Biden wants men to take over women's sports. The Taliban also segregates women. So I mean, they're basically the same. And it's like, holy shit. What a crazy fucking conservative Marjorie Taylor Greene is, right? And So I mean, you can find crazy ass people that are like the worst examples of every movement and hold
Hmm.
them up. And
Yeah.
like there are certainly people who on like the online left would be like, yeah, you just can't be racist towards white people. There's no such thing. Fuck white people, this and that, whatever they might say. White genocide might be a thing, like, which is even that's like poor branding as well. So I mean, you can
Hmm.
find people like that, but I don't think that's like a emblematic of like a broader movement. And I just disagree with the idea that like, ah yes, we're seeing all these societal trends. And it's like, dude, I'm sorry, but like the average white person walking down the street is not being discriminated against. And I don't really know if that's like an average experience, or like even an average thought of like a person of color is like, oh yeah, you can't be racist towards, towards white people. I think that what you've seen is that the like West Coast, oftentimes white progressive left is like way more progressive than the average person of color that lives in like the South and Southwest, right?
Yeah.
And that's emblematic of their voting patterns as well. And so I don't really agree with the idea that like, oh, it's these whole general thoughts of what racism is and what it isn't have changed over time, and that's what's justified the sort of rise of the alt-right and the anti-SJW crowd. Like, I agree that you can find those things on the internet, um, and they're platformed a lot more because the internet circulates information a lot better than it did in the 90s. But these types of thoughts are not new, and I think that they're proportionally not like that much bigger of people. Rather, they're just platformed a lot better because it's easy to point to like some Twitter account with 1,000 followers than it is to make an actual structural case against like what the polling data says and what people generally think if you're a conservative or if you're a liberal or a leftist, to be fair. So
I understand what you're saying, but I think the main reason that I disagree with you on it only being like a terminally online crowd is because when I went to university, I made the absolutely stupid decision to get a minor in gender studies. And I know that the university, academia is its own bubble, so fair enough. But man, this stuff was completely inundating that bubble. People were doing it in real life. People were saying it in real life. I was taught it. Um, I
well, you were taught what the? I mean, I took several women's studies courses when I was an
mm,
undergrad, right? And I don't recall. I mean, I had a pretty mainstream gender studies type education, right? And I don't recall ever being taught, you know, to like I was literally taught the opposite, right? I mean, we had what was it? I don't remember what it was called, but it was this exercise where like you all line up in a line and you all start like in a straight line, and based on different assorted characteristics or like life circumstances, like are you low income, take a step back, right? Are you white, take a step forward? Are you this or that, take a step forward or back, whatever it is. And then like by the end you've got this distribution of people based on like an equally weighted amount of privilege, right? And the lesson taken away from that was and someone in my class actually said it in response to like an open discussion afterwards, was like, he was black and he pointed to another black guy in the class and he's like, what I learned from this was that like, we're both black, but we had totally different levels of privilege, and like it's only a part of your privilege is your race, right? And like this is the exact type of lesson that was pretty standard at the time and pretty much taught in every semester at my college for one of the gender studies courses, right? And that's the type of lesson that it seems like you would want people to be taught. And I went to a pretty standard university, right? So I mean, I didn't go to some weird ass college. So
I'm trying to think. We didn't have anything like that happen. We did do like the bars of a cage metaphor for intersectionality. We did that. Um, However, I do recall there being one especially nasty professor who was like, "Yeah, okay, so we're gonna do these roundtables, but if you're a guy, I'm not gonna answer your question." I'm like, "What the fuck? Are you kidding me?" But it's like I was one of three guys in the class, so it's like I guess I'm not. See, this is also
yeah.
I think it was earlier than when I went to school than you did, because there was literally only three guys in the class, and a guy taking gender studies back then was kind of considered to be a little bit odd when I was in school. So this was like in the 2000s, not in the 2010s, right? Um,
I guess so. I mean, that would be a sign of progression rather than regression, though, right? Like my education was later than yours and seemed to be more holistic in nature, right? And
Right.
so, I mean, I agree that, I mean, you can find crazy conservative professors like Jordan Peterson, right, who spout off crazy nonsense about the vaccine and this and that, and he never makes a prescriptive statement, and he struggles oftentimes when he steps outside of his field of clinical psychology. And I could use that as an example of like, yes, look at this big conservative swing in education and this and that. But I just don't know if it's I don't know if that's generally valuable. I think what's true is that like academia has always been a farther left institution, certainly. Um, but people you have to ask yourself like, why is it that most academics are like farther left, right? Because that has to originate from somewhere, right? We can't just say, oh, perpetually it's always been the case that academia has been far. It's like no, like it has to come from somewhere, right? So either the first guy that started university education was like a far left academic, or actually what's true is that if you go back 1,000 years to when like university education started cropping up, universities have always been a realm by which to challenge social norms and a petri dish by which to grow new ideology and challenge those current mainstream ideologies. And whether that's some malicious intent of the people in universities, or rather what I think it is, which is some form of creative destruction, that's sort of the question that you have to grasp. I don't know if I don't know if the more sort of concocted conspiratorial view it makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if like today we see academia as like a particularly far left like Marxist institution. I mean, it seems like it's always been a pretty a pretty open. It's always been a relatively open platform for discourse in general.
Well, there's two things I want to talk about here. There's kind of two. First of all, my chat is reeing that you called Jordan Peterson a conservative. To be honest, if you go back and you listen to Jordan Peterson talking in say 2016, I don't think he was conservative at all. Listen to him now, I think he's actually swung that way. That being said, when he stays within his lane, when he talks about psychology, he seems to be pretty much on point, like all the time. I know, like he is a what do they call him, like a pop scientist or something. So he does have like a breadth of knowledge, and he brings that to a more digestible form, and sometimes he's wrong about some things, but it seems like when he's talking about psychology, he absolutely knows his stuff, and he's just correct. I've taken a few psychology courses when I was in school as well, and things seem to line up, and I've heard the same from what's her name, that one psychology YouTuber who's going on panels right now, and Destiny talks to her.
Oh, you're talking about Erudite?
Yes. She said basically the same thing about him, is that when he talks psychology, he seems to pretty much know his stuff.
Well, I mean, I mean, he's a clinical psychologist. That's what I said earlier. Was like, obviously he knows his stuff with regard to some things, but I just don't like. I think the problem is that you can always build a pretty strong narrative based on anecdotes, right? And that's kind of the issue that I see that conservatives tend to do a little bit more often than most of the liberal advocates that I've seen. And you can this is like how Sargon got famous, is like Twitter sniping people and being like, wow, look at how crazy this is, what this Twitter person said. And it's like, okay, I mean, yeah, sure, right? I mean, why do you think you're getting popular? Because most people might agree that that's a little bit crazy, but I just don't think that it's I don't think it justifies a lot of the vitriol associated with that movement and a lot of the sort of fervor associated with that sort of anti-SJW type crowd, where it seems like they're trying to spin a much grander narrative than it is, right? I mean, it seems like they like the average like anti-SJW type person at the time would have you believe that like walking into like it would have you believe that there's like whites need not apply signs outside of every business in Harlem or Detroit or something. It's like, it's just not true, right?
Well,
this is not the society that we live in. So
the thing is, I think when the anti-SJWs were at their peak, it might not have been true, but I think we are swinging more this way now, and I think Destiny's banning kind of shows that. Obviously he was banned for a politically partisan reason. Obviously it was a trumped up bullshit reason. And people who were in university, 10 years ago, now they're in the workforce, and now they might hold positions of power in certain institutions at certain companies, and now they can twist the knobs a bit and affect policy. So I absolutely do think that even if the anti-SJWs went too far, I mean, some of what they predicted is slowly coming true, and I don't think it's good, you know. And I think as a more general as a more general statement, I don't necessarily view I don't view myself as a conservative. I have some conservative views and I have some liberal views, but I don't think being a conservative is necessarily a bad thing. Like if I meet a conservative person, I don't go, oh well, he's obviously like morally inferior to people on the left. It's like no, 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 no. You can. I don't view the left right scale as a good evil scale personally.
Well, no, of course not. I mean, but I don't know if I understand what you're saying, right? I think that the Destiny banning, I don't know if it's. I mean, what it's emblematic of is like Twitch, one company, having a little bit more strict of a TOS. Obviously, people don't know necessarily what he got banned for. It could be a number of things, to be fair. But I don't. Again, I'm not sure if it's emblematic of like a broader societal push. I mean, like for instance, I was actually thinking about this the other day, right? When people talk about the quelling of free speech in response to all these new corporate guidelines, right? So like, credit card processors won't do business with certain people. Platforms like Twitch and Twitter and less so, but still somewhat Facebook and places like that are becoming more strict on their guidelines for dissemination of information and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, if the worst consequence of these guidelines, right, is that people are forced to either moderate their information or they will be deplatformed. I don't know if that's worse. I don't know if that's like net worse for discourse, right? Like I don't like, you know what I mean? I understand the arguments of, oh well, by like what's next? Like what's the next thing that's going to get banned? One day you'll get banned. I understand that, but it's like, okay, is society like worse because Alex Jones doesn't have a Twitter account? Like is society is worse off because like Nick Fuentes doesn't have a Twitter account? It's like, okay, I don't know if the answer to that question is yes. It doesn't seem like it would be in general. And so I'm not sure if deplatforming is a great justification for like this big societal swing. I think that really what's a sign of is maybe something that even like Noam Chomsky would have warned you about, which was like the power of advertisers, right? How do these platforms get their money? Well, they get it from advertising, right? Well, what do advertisers want to advertise on? Well, hopefully things that are relatively family friendly, right? And so I think that's probably a little bit better of an explanation than like we see this big societal shift of of people going far left and stuff like that. So
that does make sense to an extent. I think it's actually probably a combination of both because the advertising thing makes a lot of sense. I know like we're talking way back in like 2009 when you had much more edgy content on YouTube and it was getting advertisements. Eventually people started to notice and they realized that, hey, if they complain to Coca-Cola or whoever it was, that, hey, your ads are running on this YouTube video that has a bunch of slurs in it, they could actually get they could get some change if they complained loud enough. But at the same time, I mean, the people who complain about that stuff, they are a problem. That is absolutely stifling speech. And I think it actually has led to almost not necessarily a generation, but like a group of people who have realized that they can enact political change even though they're a minority by just yelling loud enough on the internet. And even then, again, not real political change, like internet political change. Like for example, getting Destiny banned. That's what I meant. Internet political change. A lot of this stuff does not filter over to real life, to be honest. But I think that they kind of, these two things that you brought up, actually, they're connected. I think that they're connected. I think the advertisement thing led to the current culture of this idea of a loud minority and people with political ideologies getting into certain places and companies, and now they're able to basically use the vagueness of a TOS to put their thumb on the scale a little bit. I think that's what's happening.
Well, hey, I mean, that's capitalism, baby. That's how it is, right? I mean, this is private companies, right? And
yeah,
I just think
that is true. Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
While people are very quick to make the argument that like, okay, this is a new public square. Obviously, you're stifling someone's free speech when you're banning them from private platforms because they're sort of like become almost public platforms at this point. I think that the problem is that, well, the opposite implication of what you're saying is that governments should be able to force people that they don't want to be associated with their product to be associated with their product, right? And so, like, the extreme example on the other end would be like, okay, well, now all of a sudden you cannot disassociate with someone on a business level because of their political ideology, right? And so the extreme example on the opposite end would be like, oh, I run a small company. I got a lady who works in sales who's black, and I got a guy who works as a like an IT guy who's just a white guy, and I find out that, and he's a great IT guy and she's a great salesperson, right? And I've never had problems with either of these employees, right? But then all of a sudden I find out, there's images that have been leaked of my IT guy who turns out he's like a member of the Klan, right? Now, to be fair, he's never done anything to, show that affiliation or do anything like that. With regard to my employees of color and this black sales lady that works with me. But now all of a sudden it's publicly known, like, this is a member of the KKK, right? And now all of a sudden I've got a black employee who's incredibly uncomfortable working with him, despite the fact that they've had a relatively stable working relationship before, right? Now, on the opposite end, now we're saying I'm not allowed to fire this person because I would be firing him for his political ideology, right? And that's like the extreme example on the other end that I feel like I'm more uncomfortable with than the idea that no, I mean, you can disassociate with people based on, based on a number of things, as long as they're not a protected class. And I just don't know if like I don't know if like political ideology should be like a protected class of people. And that seems to be what people are leaning towards on the conservative side, in general, right? I mean, that seems more uncomfortable to me than the opposite.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think we're describing two extremes where both extremes actually seem to be bad, but there doesn't seem to be a good solution for like if you try to solve one, you end up like spilling over into the other. I would say that I think if religion is going to be a protected class, then I think politics has to be as well, because on some level they're both belief, and I don't think you can choose your beliefs. I think you believe in what you believe. You can't just choose to believe in God. You can't choose not to believe in God. I don't think you can necessarily, like, if you have a certain view of what truth is in the world, I don't think you can just like will that away.
No, I'm not sure you can. I think that there's probably some level of difference here, right? I think that I get what you're saying, right? So on one hand, we might have a scenario where like someone is like a member of the Westboro Baptist Church or something like that, and it's like, okay, well, can you fire that person for their membership of the Westboro Baptist Church? It's like, I don't know. Honestly, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure if you can, um, because you'd basically be firing them for their religious beliefs, even though how extreme they are. So I understand that. I'm sure that there's some differences that the court can delineate, but I just think that in general, um, I I don't think that I'm most of the time, most of the time, pretty much any time. I don't know if I'm comfortable with the idea that the government says, despite this person's potentially abhorrent ideology that you view as abhorrent, you have to do business with them no matter what. You're forced now to use the capital that you invested in. Let them use it. Now, to be fair, they're compensating you for it, or like they're providing work for you. That seems like a more sort of precarious situation than otherwise. And I think that there is probably room in the law about like reasonable protected religious beliefs, right? So like for instance, if if you had a religion where it's like I can only work an hour a day and then I have to leave, right? Well, obviously that's a scenario where you within some reason wouldn't be able to get hired at most places, and I'm not sure you'd be faced with like a discrimination lawsuit based on not getting hired because your beliefs are somewhat preventative, right? And similarly, if you're out advocating for, okay, well, we should kill all gay people because the Bible says that you should be that death is an appropriate punishment for homosexuality. You probably wouldn't rightly expect to have a right to be hired to organize like the next Pride parade, right? If that makes any sense. So.
Now hold on a second.
What's happening?
I just got demonetized in the middle of the stream.
Why?
I blame you, this spicy conversation we're having. You know what it is? I think it's, I'm looking it up right now. Just give me a second. Yeah, okay. So, YouTube is screaming at me that I have to do something in my AdSense account.
Oh no,
It might be
I
like
did
an
it, chat.
it might be an
I
address change or something. So I don't think it's anything serious. Okay.
It was me. This was my plan the whole time to get Dev's stream taken down. Um, but no, well, if you want, we can talk about Austrian economics, or at least for a little bit here, right?
Here,
Get started
give
on
me
that.
just like 2 seconds. I did actually want to reply to some of that stuff that you just said, though. I mean, we're having fun. Why not? But give me like, can you give me like a minute or two? I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. Well, chat, there you go. There you go. Well, Bad Beezy, and to be fair, I deleted them from the chat, so they're gone now. I think you still can view it though. To be fair, those weird YouTube messages. So a lot of my mods, I think, are concentrated in in the the Econoboi.com live chat. So that's what I think is happening. But let's uh let's just go back to the main screen, I guess, until Dev figures out what's going on. I don't know if his stream can hear me, to be fair. Let me check that actually.
Yes, they can. And actually, I kind of want to ask you. So you're doing the whole thing that everyone's doing right now and copying Destiny's website, eh?
I That's a good question. I feel like at this point I'm kind of a copy of a copy because I think that so someone named White Nervosa is like basically created like a really modular version of I think Destiny's original source code, and I just worked with her to get this website built. I figured it would be a little bit more, a little bit more independent of Twitch and YouTube. So
Yeah, 'cause what I recall is that Destiny made his website open source, and then Vosh just took it and he made VGG out of DGG, and then it became like an open source fork. It's called White something, Whiteleaf. Are you using
maybe,
Whiteleaf?
yeah. I honestly don't know. I just worked with the person that made, I think it was Rose Wrist's website, and I'm pretty sure it's the same person that made Vosh's website.
Yeah,
Um,
that's Whiteleaf. It's a company that basically just took Destiny's open source and then made it closed source. But you can still get it from
well,
him. Like you can
yeah, I
still,
mean, it's still you can just Google the open source code. It's out there. And
yeah,
obviously at this point, I believe Destiny's website is closed source as well at this point. Like it's just the original open source code that's available to the public. And so it's and obviously I think White Universal has built quite a bit on top of that open source, like original open source code. But no, I just did it because it's just a way to get subscribers without being a Twitch partner, and it's a way to have some sort of independence from uh a little bit of independence from like Twitch or YouTube. Obviously, if you end up getting banned or something, it's like, oh, okay, well now I've got some like an independent platform that I can kind of draw from, which is kind of nice, right? So
yeah. The thing is, like it's a very left leaning kind of group that uses this. I've liked the DGG framework, but I have a feeling that there'd be some reeing from people who use it if I actually tried to use it like you are. I still might try though. Some might just go fuck it and try it out, you know?
I guess so. I mean, I don't. I If people would, it sounds like such a weird thing to get mad about. Wow, you're using a website platform where the creator is like, okay, it's like, good God, guys, just getting a website built here. But that's just me, I guess. I don't know. Some people are a little bit more sensitive, I suppose. But yeah, no, I just did. It was a pretty quick process. I think it took about a week to do everything. Little additions here and there, little formatting stuff here and there, and so people seem to like it in general. But to be fair, also my stream's not that big. I mean, I stream to like between like 50 and 75 people on any given day, and
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
depends on the guest, obviously. So, or like what I'm talking about. But if I had a much bigger stream, I think that the uh, the stream would be a little bit more active. That's been like the big push is like everyone make an account on econoboy.com/live and chat there, right? So I'm doing all right though. It's going okay. My streams have been doing better than I would have thought. I thought I would have had. I think there's some crazy stat. It's like to be in the top 1% of streamers, you need like 10 concurrent viewers. So I mean, I'm doing
yeah.
a lot better than most. So
Okay, I figured out the problem. I should be able to fix this after the stream. I can't do it while we're live, but so since I'm not getting any super chats for this, if you guys, anyone who's listened, you feel like checking me out in Patreon or Subscribestar, please consider doing so because I'm getting nothing until I fix this. But that's okay. That's all right.
Look, if you got any loose money you want to donate, you can always donate to me on econoboi.com/live. Currently accepting donations.
Yeah, but you're
I'll answer all your
monetized.
I don't know if I am. My streams usually aren't monetized when I
Oh, really?
stream
Hold on, I
right
can
off the start.
I can see a super chat button on your thingy.
Well, it's just that when I go to the back end, it says monetization off. So I don't know how that
really?
works. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it maybe it's just off for the video's purpose, but I'm not sure. But anyway, well, hopefully you get that figured out. I was talking to my chat before we started our talk, and one of the first videos I saw when looking up Austrian economics was Glenn Jacobs. If you know who that is,
No idea who that is.
Oh, okay.
No clue.
Not a big. Okay. Well, Glenn Jacobs, he's the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. He's got about 200,000 views on this lecture he gave on Austrian economics, and the Knox County, Tennessee, is the biggest county in Tennessee. It's like 500. Pretty good number of people that live there, and he is also professionally known as Kane. He has been a professional wrestler for like 25 years or something like that. It's been a really long time.
Yeah, that fella. I know who Kane is, yeah.
Yeah, so Kane he's the mayor of the largest county in Tennessee, and he's also apparently like one of the most viewed, he's got like one of the most viewed lectures on Austrian economics in all of YouTube. He's got,
Wait, Kane?
Like, yeah. Fucking Glenn Jacobs, all right? Austrian economist, 200,000 views. So also known as the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. So I didn't learn much from his lecture, though, to be fair.
that's I never expected that. But then again, there's always like kind of strange things that come out of wrestling, whether it's like actors or politicians or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse Ventura was the governor of a state, and I think there's another wrestler that ended up becoming a politician. I can't remember the name though. But
wasn't
obviously,
Arnold.
Well, Arnold wasn't a professional wrestler. Yeah.
No.
But I'm pretty sure there's at least one other wrestler that became like a pretty high level politician. So, well, maybe Trump counts. Trump was part of the WWE, part of the WWE Hall of Fame. So
there was one more. I gotta remember. Hold on. Yeah, Jesse Ventura. I don't know. I thought there was at least one more, but I can't recall.
I mean, Glenn Jacobs is the mayor of the fucking largest county in Tennessee, so
yeah,
let's see.
Yeah. Before we move on to the Austrian stuff, though, I know there's one guy who's like, "Watch my ANCAP video," and it's like, oh, if we have time, maybe. But I mean, there's some overlap between Austrian and ANCAP ideas. But I know that like there are some Austrians who did not like the ANCAPs. But anyway, what were we talking about before I had to go check out the YouTube thing? There was one thing I wanted to comment on. I don't remember.
Talking about free speech.
Right.
And
okay.
Yep.
So yeah, I understand the point of view because, for example, I think a more fundamental liberal principle is free association, and so that means you should be able to distance yourself from people that you find politically distasteful, even if that means in a business sense. So that does mean that Twitch can ban people for trumped up bullshit reasons, like Destiny, in my opinion. Because it is their right. It's not good, but it's their right. I mean, for example, I don't think I would hire a socialist or a fascist to work at my business. Just wouldn't, the ideas seem too distasteful to me, and I think the people who like really hardcore hold those ideas, there's probably something like in their personality that just wouldn't mesh with mine. So I understand that point of view, and it makes sense. It's just that like you can take that and you can go to the other extreme with it. I mean, imagine like a right-wing company that controls a large share of some kind of business, and they say, you know what, Econoboi, I'm not going to do business with you because I can afford to do that because I'm too big. Because you're a sock dem and I hate sock dems. And like at some point, it becomes a bit ridiculous. They have the right to do it, but that doesn't mean that it's good to do it.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I don't know if there's room for moderation here, right? So I think that the other extreme would be like, some progressive, like some super progressive guy controls like an electric company, and he's like, okay, well, you're a conservative. I'm not gonna feed my electricity into your house, right? But I mean, I think that's more of an argument for why things like electricity should be public goods anyway, right? And
Yeah.
those like purely privately organized things would probably be a little bit different. And to be fair, I don't know if most private actors have gone so far as to be like, oh, you're a conservative, well, you can't open a bank account with us, right? Because you have to keep in mind, right? I mean, businesses are also self-interested to some extent, to a holy extent, because conservative encompasses like half of the U.S. population, right? And so it's going to be a pretty rare case that a business is going to be like, oh yeah, just no conservatives can shop here. There's obviously conservatives on Twitch and YouTube and like all these streaming platforms we're talking about, right? And Twitter as well, right? It's not like all the 200 some odd 250 some odd conservative members of Congress are all banned, right? They all have Twitters and Facebooks, and a lot of them do more than that. And so I don't think like mainstream conservative ideology is getting banned, right? I think it's really just more of the fringe stuff, right? So.
I mean, someone in my chat says, what if the organization becomes politically corrupt or influenced? And that can happen, yes. And I think it has happened in some places. But I do not think it has happened to the level that some conservatives think that it's happened. It's happened a little bit, but it's not like it's just, everywhere and destroying society and you can't walk into a grocery store and buy food anymore unless you show your card carry, you're a card carrying member of the Democratic Party. Like it doesn't work like that. I will say, one thing I didn't like in Canada, this is just a non sequitur, no, a half sequitur, is that in some places in Canada you couldn't go to a grocery store without a vaccine pass. That pissed me off, but that's like it's not a political distinction. It's a medical one.
Well, yeah, I think that I mean, in a time of relative emergency, right? We might expect some of those, and that's also not a. Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's not that's not necessarily. I mean, the people have made that an ideological policy, right? It's not meant to be one, right? I mean, nobody's saying conservatives can't get vaccinated and also can't show their cards, right? And to be fair, in Canada, like you guys don't have nearly the anti-vax problem that we do in America. It's like 99% of people or something, like some crazy percentage of adults.
I think it's 90. I think it's 90 right now here.
Yeah, whereas in America, I think it's like 80 to 85% of adults, right? And then there's a really strong like anti-vax movement within. It seems like middle-aged men are like the people that make up that 15 to 20%. So
the same spam bot in your chat is now coming over to my chat.
I banned them. They got to go over to your chat now.
Yeah, see, insofar as this is like a completely different conversation, but insofar as vaccine passports go, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I think that people should get vaccinated, but I don't like the idea of the government tracking whether or not you are vaccinated to the extent that you should have to show a card to go grocery shopping. Like not even like going to something that's not essential, like a sports game or something, but to go grocery shopping. That seems like that's too far for me. So like my objection is a political one, not necessarily like a health one or like a medical one. I just think that that's too much. Like you shouldn't have to show a card to go get your groceries. That seems ridiculous to me.
I don't know. I mean, you got to prove that you're vaccinated to go to school, right? I feel like this is the example that many people rely on to normalize the idea of like vaccine passports, and I think it's an effective one because nobody has seriously questioned the fact that like you have to prove that you're vaccinated to go to school in most every public school in the whole country, right?
I know that you mentioned don't rely on anecdotes, but I'm going to rely on an anecdote anyway. And I don't know how it is in the States, but how that plays out here in Canada is that you must get vaccinated to graduate. And I know that because being a lazy teenager, I waited until the very final day of high school to get my shots.
Well, what your parents didn't just fucking take you to get vaccinated? I mean, that's what I'm gonna do if I have kids. I'm just like, yeah, we're getting all our shots today, kid. All of them.
Well, the school would send, like in your locker or whatever it was. I forget. I think there's like a mailbox that every student. I don't remember, but basically you got a message and it said, "Listen, yeah, you have to get your vaccines, and here's when the nurse will be around to do these vaccines." And I was like, "Fuck it, I want to go play video games." So I would go and play video games instead
I mean,
because
my
it was a free
school
period.
in
Like they're like, "We're canceling all classes for this 3 hours. Go get your vaccines." And I was like, "I think I'll go home, thank you." So
I mean, my school, which was a Texas school, public school, we had a day where everyone just had to get a vaccine. I can't remember what vaccine it was. I think it was an HPV vaccine, if I'm not mistaken. We were all like 12, I want to say,
mhm.
and um, there was a day where it was like, "Yep, we're all getting vaccinated," and there was no choice in the matter.
Yeah,
like,
so
like
there were a
kids were
few
fucking
instances. There were a few like
yeah,
that
yeah.
when I was younger, yes. But when it came, high school had 5 shots. I think you had to get to leave high school, and I waited to the very final day because I could just ditch class, right? Like when you're a kid, like you're 8 years old, it's like okay, fine. But like when you're like 14, 16, if you have like video games sitting at home, if you have a girlfriend you want to go see, like you're ditching class. Just how it is. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't like
sure.
a I hate vaccines. No, 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 no. I was just lazy. I just like bailing
Yeah,
class.
well, right, and I just think that like there's probably nothing. I think education should be a right, right? I think that you should have a right to an education in pretty much any country, and um, so I think there's few things that are more fundamental to the human like modern contemporary human experience than getting an education,
Hmm.
and or like your ability to get an education if you want one, and uh, we've had vaccine mandates for like 100 fucking years in public schools, right? And so I just think
Yeah.
that the idea that hey, in the midst of a pandemic, we are going to take some extraordinary measures, which include like, hey, part of your participation in civil society is predicated on basically being vaccinated. It's like, okay, well, I can understand that that's, I can frame it more as a part of like your personal responsibility to get vaccinated and to participate in civil society in that way, right? We have some responsibility in society, even if we don't want to, in general. Now, to be fair, that's more of an ideological position. Practically, at least in America, like broad-based vaccine passports are just like never going to happen. Probably not legal, and vaccine mandates are all pretty much the same thing. Like they're never going to happen. They're probably not legal in America. So it's not really something worth pushing for a ton. It's just that it just seems frustrating when people are like, my freedom to go get my groceries is being impeded because I don't want the fucking life-saving vaccine. It's like, okay, well, I don't. I feel like we have very different. There was that story about it was like yesterday. The guy who, I mean, you probably heard it. You 100%. I bet you've heard of this. The guy who felt like the U.S. was becoming an authoritarian state because he was probably going to get arrested for his involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. So he fled to the bastion of liberal freedom known as Belarus, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
This idiot, this American idiot who was part of the January 6th riot said he thought America was becoming too authoritarian, so he fled to Belarus. I mean, what a dum dum, right? I just like there's no sympathy for a guy like that, right? And I just think that I think similarly, like I'm empathetic to the arguments against the vaccine in the sense that I feel like we should understand them so that we can counteract them. But it's like, guys, like it really is just such a simple thing to do to go and get vaccinated. Um, so
Yeah,
I don't know.
my entire chat is now going like the life saving. Like, there's a lot of vaccine skeptical people in my community. I'm not one of them. Um, in terms of just the efficacy of the
Yeah, I mean,
vaccines, like I
yeah,
think the last numbers that I looked at, which to be fair are about 3 months old at this point, the last numbers that I looked at is that you had a higher chance of getting a bad outcome from the vaccine than then a higher chance, then getting a bad outcome from COVID. If you were a male aged 12 to 17 and all other demographics, you got a better chance with the vaccine. So if you're just rolling the dice, it seems like most people should just get the vaccine. That being said, I do think that if we accept that people have a fundamental right to what goes inside of their bodies, I believe that with sex, I believe that with abortions, I believe that with, for example, the food that you eat, I do think that vaccines have to, just in terms of consistency, they have to fall under that same protection. So I think people should absolutely get vaccinated, but I think they have the right not to. As dumb as I think that would be, I think it would be pretty dumb. And but they should not be forced to get vaccinated. That's the line for me. And I guess things
yeah,
are just...
but I don't think that, like, I think it depends on what you mean by forced, right? So like, I don't think people, I don't think police should go to people's houses and fucking hold them down and make them get vaccinated, right? But I do think that if you're talking about like, I want to create a safe environment for my customers, or I want to create like a generally safe environment for like the broad civil society, I just think vaccine passports, again, ideologically, I don't, as a politician, I don't think I would push for this, but like ideologically, I don't see a ton wrong with like the city government saying, hey, in the midst of a pandemic, if you want to crowd into a fucking nightclub and have a good time, totally okay, but you've got to be vaccinated. I mean, I just think that that's a pretty reasonable thing for the government to decide.
Sure. I think the issue, well, what's happened here in Canada is that the vaccine passport, it was even among our vaccinated population, like the desire to keep it going was kind of waning after a few months. So they made it optional. So it's still there. And if a company wants to put forward the requirement that people scan their passports, they can, but the government isn't requiring them to anymore, because there was a lot of business owners who were saying like, listen, we don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to scan our customers. We don't want to. A lot for some of them, they didn't have the manpower to do it, because they didn't have the manpower to throw people out when they didn't have vaccine cards or vaccine passports on their phone. And for some of them, it was ideological. They said that it shouldn't be our business to be getting into the private information, the private medical information of our customers. It's not what we're here for. So there was a lot of reasons as to why the passport system here in Canada became optional, which I think is fine. Like an optional passport's like whatever. I don't care about an optional passport. I do care about a government mandated passport. I think that's too far. I mean, it's probably just difference in preferences for the two of us. It's not like it's a big thing. I think though,
big disagreement. I hate you, Dev.
Oh, sorry.
Bitch.
Sorry. But yeah, I just found it to be kind of distasteful when the government said that everyone had to do this regardless of whether or not you actually wanted to. And I was like, I don't know about that. But you know what? It's done now. All of the restrictions are gone here. I think the mask mandate ended a few days ago. So it's done. It's done. And you know what? I've had COVID, so I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about the whole thing anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was Jared Polis, who's the governor of a state in America called Colorado, and he was one of the early, more like liberal people who was like, look, okay, we're not doing any more COVID restrictions. All right, get vaccinated if you want. If you don't want, then fuck you, I guess. Like that was basically his argument. I think pragmatically that's probably the best political position, right? At this point, where it's like, look, fuck, if you don't want to get the vaccine, I guess don't fucking get it, right? But, we're not going to inconvenience everyone else because you don't want to get the vaccine, basically, right? And so that's where, I mean, I think pragmatically, politically, it's that's reasonable. So
what I will probably do personally is I'll probably get the vaccine once the federal restrictions are lifted. Because I
being a contrarian,
yes,
I'm not gonna get it until you fucking don't make me to.
Yes,
like what the fuck, Dad? Who cares?
Giga Chad, yes. I made a deal with myself. I was like, listen, because I do fundamentally believe that political power comes from the people. I'm not going to do something that I disagree with heavily when me doing something reasonable also is me rubber stamping these things that I believe to be unreasonable, so I'm not going to do it. And you know what?
It's not.
I'll
That's
be fine.
Not true.
I think it is.
Like
that is how I feel.
It's not.
Yeah.
That's your feeling is dumb, and I disagree with it.
That's fine, but I'm not going to get the vaccine until the feds release their own restrictions, and that's how I feel about it. But then I will, and then I'll feel just fine about it.
That's like the people that's like, oh, I don't believe the government like legally should be allowed to pay taxes, so they end up going to debtor's prison, like fucking Peter Schiff's dad, right? And it's like, I mean, yeah, sure, I guess, right? But like, but why? Like, it changes nothing. There's no like, there's no societal change on the back of that, and also the vaccine just works.
No,
So like, why
that's
not
all
just
true.
get
That's
the
all true.
fucking...
But I also value my own integrity, at least to a point, where it's like if I cannot go along with something if I actually believe it to be bad, and I believe what the government has done here to be bad. There is one thing, for example, that I was actually happy that it was so unpopular it was scrapped within like 2 days. Um, at some point during the lockdowns, the government here tried to they didn't try, they did, they empowered the police to randomly stop anybody that they saw outside of their houses to ask them where they were going, and to make them show proof that they were actually allowed to be out of their house and they were going to a job, because jobs gave out slips that said we authorize this person to come to work for, like, so that was a thing, but about a year ago. And it was so unpopular here that even the police departments were saying we're not going to enforce this, and they had to back down because it was so unpopular. But when I heard that, I was like, man, there seems to be no limit to which these people will go unless they receive some kind of pushback. And then I said to myself, you know what? I will not, even if it's good for me, damn it, I won't do something if I think that it's wrong. Morally wrong.
Yeah, I
Not
guess.
sorry
Well,
to
I mean,
disappoint.
obviously you think the vaccine fucking works, right? It's just
Yes, of
like,
course.
so it just seems someone put in my chat, it's like not getting vaccinated to own the libs. That's kind of what it feels like. And it just seems I mean, there were people who I saw a news report actually, and it was when the seatbelts became a federal. I don't know if it's federal,
Oh,
but like every
I know
state
this. I
basically
know this
adopted it.
story. I know the seatbelt story, and I don't agree it's comparable because you don't put seatbelts inside of you.
What do you mean you don't put a... Well, obviously a seatbelt is a part of a car. Obviously, I get that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you could principally disagree. The
Mm.
federal government shouldn't be able to regulate what I do within my own property, which is a car, right?
Mm.
But you can also still practically recognize, like, the best way to advocate against that isn't to stubbornly not wear a seatbelt, like, like a dumbass, honestly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
People that don't wear seatbelts. But the best way is to rather wear a seatbelt and maybe just advocate against that as part of the political process. Vote for candidates that support that. Go out and picket signs, stuff like that. I mean, it obviously doesn't really, like, the mechanisms by which societal change occurs is not in the form of not doing a thing the government tells you to, right? A lot of the times, at least in the case where 90% of people have, acquiesced to it anyway, right? Obviously, the best thing to do from that point would be like, get the vaccine and then just advocate against it, against like the principle of it in the first place, like the what's the AFL-CIO, like that kind of style thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not only interested in the end result. I'm also interested in the process. So yes, the end result is that we don't want the government to be restricting people in this way. But I also, even if it does nothing to the end result, I don't think that it would be moral of me to just go along with it or not go along with it based on solely on the end result. Like I think the means also matter, not just the ends. As a general
Well,
statement.
yeah, but that's kind of my point, right? Is that, like, if you believe in the vaccine and you think that it works, but
Mm-hmm.
you just don't believe in the mandate, obviously, to me, the
Yeah.
best course of action would be get the vaccine because you believe in it, you think it helps because it does, to be fair, and then just be like, okay, well, principally, like, I got vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, I believe in the vaccine, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just don't think principally we should mandate people to get the vaccine. Like, obviously, even your own platform of argument becomes stronger when you do that, right? But just having this, like, stubborn position
Um,
of, like,
partially
I
and
just don't,
partially not. I don't
I just don't like it.
I don't completely see it that way, because I do think that if you disagree with something but then you do it anyway, you are in some way lending your legitimacy to that thing that you disagree with.
Well, no, because you'd have got the vaccine. No, it's the opposite, because you're saying I would have got the vaccine if it wasn't required, but because it's required, I'm not going to get the vaccine, right? So, like, you're not lending legitimacy to that process at all, right? You're the opposite of that, right? It's people that would lend legitimacy to it are people who don't believe in the vaccine, but still get the vaccine because it's required, right? Whereas you believe in the vaccine anyway, you just don't believe in the process, right? So I think that at that point you would just say, okay, well, I don't think you should be required. I'm pro-vax. I'm not anti-vax, but I'm gonna get the vaccine and then go from there.
I think we might have our wires crossed here because that's not what I'm saying. Um, it's more like it could be a situation where it could be a situation where, for example, I get the vaccine, and let's say the government cracks down harder. Hypothetically, they're not, thankfully, but let's just say they are. They crack down harder. I get the vaccine. I go to protest that, and they're like, you know what? We are arresting every single person here who hasn't had the vaccine. Fuck you. And they come up to me, and I'm protesting, and they're gonna be like, well, you know what? Even though you're speaking out, we don't really care because you already had it. You already cucked out. So fuck you. They'll find me. They'll pat me on my head and they'll send me on my way. So I didn't actually like I didn't truly oppose them if I gave in to them where it counts.
I mean, I feel like there are scenarios where we all would intellectually actually agree with the idea that a strict mandate like that actually would make sense, right? So, like,
Of course, yes.
if we say that, yeah, well, okay, well, of course, yes, right? I mean, obviously, well, it sounds like we agree then fundamentally. It's just maybe the degree then. Like, if COVID was like 50% mortality rate, well, I mean, fuck, right? I think there's some pretty draconian shit the government would be emboldened to do, and it would probably be have a legitimate reason for doing that, right? For like public interest, right? But that's not the scenario we find ourselves in. COVID has like a 10 or 15% death rate if you're old or have pre-existing conditions, but if you're healthy, it's like a 1% death rate or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Well, I mean,
did you have it by the way? Have you had COVID?
No, I always social distance, masked up. Got lucky, I guess. Some combination of the three. Never had it. Haven't had it yet, I should say.
I've had it now 3 times. And the first time was random, very early on. I was very surprised that I had it because nobody in my area of the world, not of the world, of the country had it yet. But there was apparently it had first arrived here and I just got unlucky, you know. We hadn't been doing any kind of lockdowns or anything at that point because it was so early on. And I just had the roll of the dice that I was the one that ended up picking it up at a grocery store or something. And then due to my job, I stay inside like all the time, right? Like I think every content creator has basically said this, that during the lockdowns, their life didn't change at all. You know what I mean? Like we're all just inside streaming or recording or writing or whatever it is we're doing anyway. It's not like we're going out all the time. But then it turned out that other people who were vaccinated actually that I knew brought COVID back into the house. And I was like, okay, thanks guys. I appreciate that. So in rapid succession, we're talking 5 months apart. We had Delta and then we had Omicron. Boom, boom. But to be fair, second and third times, it wasn't that severe at all. It was
obviously when pre-existing infection seems to confer some amount of protection, right? You're not going to get you're probably not going to get quite as fucked up the second time that you get get the disease versus the first time, and that's true with most, as far as I'm aware, it's true with most infections.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a matter of vaccine probably can't hurt, right? And it seems like it very much does the opposite, right? It helps a lot, and so that'd be kind of that. I mean, that'd be my mindset. That's what I was talking to my grandma, and she was talking about the vaccine and whatnot, and she was saying, she was like, Jake, it's just like the flu, right? I mean, obviously the flu shot, getting the flu sucks. Anyone's got the flu.
Did you just dox yourself?
Fun time. Did I dox myself? What do you mean?
You just said your first name. I thought you kept that secret.
No, it's not secret. No, it's not secret.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I obviously just go by Econoboi, but anyway, she was saying, not COVID. She was saying, the flu, the flu sucks, right? It sucks to get, but and the flu shot can even make you feel sick as well, right? But obviously, yes. From her perspective, it was like, well, I've gotten the flu after I've gotten the flu shot. And I've always been thankful that I had the flu shot, because as bad as I feel with the flu after getting the flu shot, I can only imagine how bad I would feel without the flu shot, having gotten the flu. It's an old woman, obviously, as well. So,
yeah.
And COVID is, is very similar, you know. And to be fair, most of my, I mean, you know, when you look at America, like 95% of people over the age of 65 have gotten the COVID vaccine. That's why I was saying, like, it seems like most of the anti-vaxxers are like young and middle-aged men. At least
Hmm.
that's what I tend to see in the filling the hospital beds nowadays is like middle-aged men basically that
Well,
have like
it seems
diabetes
like
and shit.
they're like the demographic to like take more risks in general. So it makes sense that that would kind of bleed over. People in my
Well,
chat
yeah.
are reading about like the Pfizer documents that were released, and there's a bunch of side effects, and they've been
Oh, you know,
they're
this
like there's all
Pfizer
this
big
shit.
conspiracy.
There's so much
Everyone's
shit.
lying to
Well,
us.
hold
It's
on.
a big. Oh my god.
I don't
Yeah, we've
necessarily
all
know
heard it.
what I don't necessarily know what the conspiracy is. I don't know. I'm not gonna. I don't know enough about both sides of that argument. Like, did Pfizer cover things up? Is the vaccine safe? It seems like probably, but are there side effects? It seems like maybe. It's a little bit fishy to me that I think the government has basically allowed them not to be prosecuted for bad outcomes. That's like, oh, that doesn't sound quite right to me. So like I understand that there's a lot going on with regards to vaccine efficacy. So chat, I'm just going to tell you this right now, okay? If you don't like the mRNA vaccines, there are traditional vaccines. Go get the Johnson and Johnson. It's a regular style vaccine. Get that
J&J.
instead. You know, it'll be okay.
Listen, Devs chat. All right, I hate all of you fucking people and all your stupid ass opinions. Okay, but all right, I love you enough to say that you should get the vaccine so you don't die from, you know, COVID basically. So get the vaccine. I mean, it's all. I mean, you know, it's. I understand the argument of like it's only 1%. Whatever. It's only 1% fatal on average and whatever. And I'm a healthy young person and I get that, right? I mean, the truth is, if you're a healthy young person, you're probably not going to die if you get the disease or whatever. That's true. But it's just like, well, I mean, at the very least, wouldn't you just want to not feel like shit? You know, I mean, like, do you want to? Because it reduces significantly the how bad COVID is when you get it, right? So to me, it just seems like it's like, okay, on a spectrum from feeling like dog shit to getting killed. I could significantly shift to the right that spectrum if I get this vaccine.
Econoboi
And to be
moves to
fair,
the right.
well, I mean, to be fair, some people are asymptomatic, but you know you can never count on that probability, right? So you know it's probably always better to get the vaccine. So I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I love all you guys. I just want you to get the life-saving Trump vaccine, the Trump vaccine. So. You know?
Well, actually, you know what? In Canada, there's a company called Medicago, based in Quebec, and they've patented this very unique technology. Where what they'll do is they genetically engineer ferns, okay? And these ferns have inside of them what they call VLPs, or otherwise known as virus-like particles. They are not the virus at all. It's not like they have like a tiny form of the neutered virus. They don't contain any virus DNA like with the mRNA vaccines. It is a facsimile of the virus, a non-living facsimile of the virus that are grown inside of these biologically engineered ferns, and they turn those into vaccines. And they're expensive to make, but the main draw of them is that they're supposed to be completely symptomless when you take them because they're not actually the vaccine. They're not actually the virus. So it's like Canada at this point sunk a shit ton of money into generating this alternate way of getting a vaccine. It may turn out to even be safer because there's no side effects. So, you can always get that one, chat. They just approved it. It's been going through tests for 2 years. It's now out in the public. You can always get that one.
Look, these motherfuckers, I feel like at a certain point, like some people, it's like some people I feel like it's just you can't prove anything to them almost. Some people are like this nowadays. You know, it's like damn, you know, it's like if a Democrat told some people that the sky was blue, they'd have to fucking stick their head outside the window to make sure, and even then they might think that it's some government conspiracy fucking Chicken Little situation where it's a projected sky in the air. Like I don't know, that's how it feels sometimes. It's like, man, I just don't
See,
I don't know when we started I don't know when this ultimate skepticism of science started. It just sounds bizarre to me. I don't know if it's a modern invention or what the deal is.
and you know what it is? there's been a lot of, for example, in sci-fi, there's always the horror story of the scientist with no morals who goes too far, and he does something like he wholly unethical, and he destroys the human soul in doing it, and he creates these abominations. That like story trope is like generally that kind of story trope comes from a society that is generally skeptical of science. But it's not just that. Like that was more of a meme. It's also that like I understand the way that my chat feels. I don't agree with them all the time, but I get it, because if your view is that you basically trusted institutions, and you grew up trusting these institutions, and you thought that, you know accreditation in these institutions meant something, but then you realized, oh well, one, you can be in, what are they called, autodidacts, you can just learn something yourself, and the accreditation is just a social thing. It doesn't actually prove that you know something, because there's many idiots out there who have degrees that don't actually know what the degree is meant to teach them. And then there's also the opposite. And two, the institutions themselves, if you whether or not it's a reasonable belief, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but if you believe that the institution themselves are corrupt, then you're not going to trust their accreditation. So, and you know what? There's been just enough weird stuff that has happened over the years to make reasonable people think, you know what? I just don't trust this shit anymore. I don't trust when either party in the government says something. I don't trust when anybody in the news media says something, because look at all these examples of people in the news media, literally just making up stories whole cloth. I like there basically I don't know how, is it like the social trust has worn away almost, it feels like, for a lot of these people, where the institutions that they trusted, they don't trust them anymore. And partially is just because of wacky, crazy conspiracy shit, and partially is because those institutions themselves have sometimes behaved very poorly.
Yeah, I can understand that, where that comes from. I just think that the idea would be that how do I put this? You can be skeptical of science, but I think that you should always give generally academic consensus benefit of the doubt, right? So, I think that a lot of times what people neglect to realize oftentimes is that when the media or science is wrong, oftentimes there's a pretty big process by which we disseminate the fact that they're wrong and are relatively transparent in that. It's not that the media or science or the government is like never kept secrets or anything like that, right? I think there's a lot more room to be skeptical of the government than like science, but again, like creative destruction is still a pretty prevalent thing in science, and I don't know if it's really I don't know if any of that is like a justification for like, yes, I just don't trust anything that any doctor on TV says, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, you can live your life however you want. It just seems like you're probably going to have worse outcomes because of that. I mean, there was a guy I knew who his best friend, one of his best friends, I should say, died from COVID. They all refused to get the vaccine. His friend actually got COVID from him, right? From the guy that I'm talking about. And however, even after one of his best friends fucking died from COVID, didn't get the vaccine, he eventually got the vaccine. You want to know how he got the vaccine, Dev?
Tell me about it.
He had an annual hunting trip scheduled in Canada every year.
Oh, and he had to go?
He was required to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So best friend dying wasn't enough to get the vaccine. But Canada, you got to go on your hunting trip every year. It's like, this is the kind of mindset that I just feel like is just like it. You know what I mean? Is it really like a principled disagreement with anything? Is it really like, oh, I just don't trust science or the government? Or is it like, yeah, I just don't want to be inconvenienced, right? It seems to be a lot of what it is, to me at least. Now, to be fair to the American population, again, there's only like 10 or 15% of people that still haven't gotten the vaccine. It's not like a huge portion of people, but they're very loud. And in the case of Canada, they're also very loud and sometimes very annoying in the case of all these convoy protests and all that kind of stuff. So
we're going to disagree on this too, because I didn't like how Trudeau handled that. I think he went way too far. But at the same time, You know, I understand because they were blocking roads. They weren't just protesting; they were also blocking roads, and that becomes a thing because it's if you're blocking a road, like a road is for public transport. You can't just block them, you know. But then again,
Wow.
I I've
Or
I've, I've,
can you?
I've
Because
heard.
they're public roads. I paid
Oh,
for that
maybe.
road.
But then again, I've also heard people on the left say like, well, protests they're meant to be disruptive. They can't just because this idea that you shouldn't actually shake the boat is this liberal bourgeois idea. It's like shut the fuck up. So it's funny how the trucker protest played out, considering that it was like a communist's wet dream, but all the communists opposed it, and none of the people who protested were communists. But the actual procedures of the protest are exactly what people who are, let's say, they're anarcho syndicalists and they're talking about a general strike. You know, the procedure was the same, but they all get turned on it. It was really funny to see.
Well, I mean, obviously you can believe in protests and just disagree with some protests, right? I mean, that doesn't
Yeah, of course,
seem
yeah.
contradictory or anything. I mean, obviously, there's some people that got kind of caught in weird, seemingly contradictory rhetoric in that regard, like with regard to like, oh, the BLM protests or this and that versus like the trucker convoy. And I mean, I think that the most consistent position is always ultimately going to be like, yeah, I mean, I just disagree with some protests, right? I mean, not every, you can agree with someone's right to protest, but disagree with,
Mhm.
some forms of
the
protest, right?
the issue with that position is that you end up getting like really. I'm not saying this is you, but there's a really stupid. What's a great example? Okay, they deleted the tweet, but it was the Gravel Institute, I think. And they said, yes, we've been advocating for people to raid the Capitol, and no, we don't like it now that it's happening on January 6th. It's good when the left does it, and it's right when the bad does it. It's bad when the right does it. And it's like, holy shit, guys. Like, come the fuck on.
Oh, but no, but I mean, that is consistent. I mean, that's morally, because you again, you can say that as stupid as it is to say like I want the left to raid the Capitol, right? I mean, you can say like this is an action that I would support based on the people who I agree with doing it, but I wouldn't support based on people who disagree. I mean, it's similar to how like there was a funny clip of one of the funniest clips of news that I've ever seen was right after the 2019 election in the UK. It was the 2019 election in the UK. Alistair Campbell was being interviewed by Piers Morgan on the he had, I think it was called like Sunday Morning or something like that. And basically Piers Morgan's like, well, I mean, you said you disagreed with the referendum, and yet now all of a sudden you've lost yet again. Look at that. And then Alistair Campbell's like, well, obviously I disagreed with the outcome, right? That doesn't mean that I'm in favor of it. And he's like, well, will you ever accept the results of the Brexit referendum? Will you ever accept the results now that you've lost, three votes in a row or whatever on it? And he's like, well, no, I'll never accept the results. I disagree, right? I mean, I can still believe in the democratic process, but I'm not necessarily bound to everything that a democratic outcome says. And I think that's pretty consistent, similar to how you could say that, obviously, if you want to go protest the fact that the fucking, stop signs are red, but they should be blue, I guess you can. But I'm also free to say that that's kind of dumb, right? So,
Yeah, I think
uh,
I think that there's a big difference between those two examples, though. Like because that one was respecting the democratic process, the process itself, but disagreeing with the outcome. But you're like, you know what? It's like, you know what? I had an idea. The idea lost at the vote. I still think the idea is good, but you know what? People disagreed. They won the vote. So that's one thing. Okay, it's another thing to say that like our riots are good and your riots are bad. Because downstream from that is our violence is good and your violence is bad. And to me, as I still consider myself to be a liberal. As a liberal, there is this idea that we should all play by the same rules, and the more radical extremes of either side of the political spectrum just don't respect that. They say, you know what, our violence good, your violence bad. It's good if we purge people. It's not good if you purge people. And it's like that. It's morally consistent for them, sure, but it's also morally disgusting for them.
well, I mean, obviously, there are forms of violence that we would say are good, and then there are forms of violence that we would say are bad, right? So obviously,
Yes,
if
but
someone's trying
riots.
to,
I'm talking about riots, though.
well, obviously, we would say that there are some riots that are probably morally justified, though, right? I mean, again, if if people in Hong Kong rioted against the government, I mean, most people in the Western world would say like that's probably a good thing, right? Like that's a good form of riot and disruption. The people of Hong Kong, right? Because they're rioting against an authoritarian government, right? And so it's just a matter of what you would say is a good riot and what you would say is a bad riot, right?
That's true, but the ultimate end of that position is that compromise disappears if you take that to its logical extreme. I don't think it's a good road to go down.
Well, no, because compromise. I think compromise has already disappeared at the point where riots have been deemed necessary by the people participating in them, right? So, um, obviously, there's the Martin Luther King quote of, riots are the language of an unheard people or something like that, and I think that is largely true to some extent, right? I mean, obviously, most people would not choose in a first order sense to riot, right? And so it's at that point at least internally justifiable to riot, but it just depends from an external view, like, well, is this riot justified based on what's the context of the riot, right? And so again, most people would say that the Hong Kongers rioting against the central Beijing government would probably be a good thing, right? Or the the protests in Moscow against the war in Ukraine might be an example of if they rioted against their government, might be an example of something that is morally justifiable, right?
Right.
But then people might say that if you were to riot for your right to, frankly, I don't even know what the fuck the truckers in Canada were mad about, because most of the sanctions had been lifted, but I guess it was pretty much the vaccine. You had to get vaccinated to cross the border or whatever it was. I guess that was it. But it's like rioting against for your right not to get vaccinated is something that people might find a little bit more indefensible, I guess. Right. But to be fair, as far as I'm aware, they didn't riot.
I know it. Yeah, there was a few instances of violence actually, and my chat's not going to like this because I've been researching heavily the trucker thing, and I did actually find a few instances where the truckers were themselves violent. So it's not all just fake news, guys. I have video clips. You'll see it when the video comes out. The video's coming eventually, but the point being is that I understand your point, but the natural end result of it is something like, well, here's the group of Nazis, and they want to kill all the Jews. And so they're going to riot, and they're going to view themselves as justified because this is what they want, and it's all just your perspective. And it's like, okay, yeah, fine, but if it all just boils down to your perspective, and people are radical enough that they're not going to settle for not having their entire perspective, then it's just eternal war all the time. And I don't think that's a good society to live in. There should be some set rules that we all follow so that we can say, okay, within this space, within this framework, we can have disagreements and still coexist.
Well, I think that is the framework that we largely live under now, right? It's just that obviously sometimes people feel justified to riot, and at that point we just have to try and evaluate whether or not that was a righteous rioting or not, right? And I understand what you're saying. Well, that leads necessarily to an instance where people might be inclined to riot, even if it's wrong. And I understand that, but people are going to feel that anyway. Like it's not legal. It's not legal to riot right now. Like people,
right, yes.
we don't broadly tolerate rioting in any context already, right? It's just a matter of if we're having the moral discussion. Well, obviously there are some examples where rioting against your government is probably justified, right? Again, people bring up the Hong Kong protests, people might bring up Russian protests, whatever it might be. I think that's where people are, at least have some kind of a point.
At that point, the issue then becomes it's something like if we're not all playing by the same rules, what obligation do I have to look at things from your point of view?
Well, we are all playing by the same rules, right? The rule is that we will evaluate the morality of the riot at the point that at the point that it happens, right? And obviously, if you it's just there's a relatively high bar for like what is a righteous example of people rioting. It's not something that's generally tolerable. And at that point, the legal system just goes from there.
No, I know what you mean. It's like I'm almost able to describe this. I'm almost able to describe this. It's like if the riot, if their sole purpose seems to be, we want to destroy liberal society. So that could be socialist, that could be fascist, either side. Because we don't like the rules that we're living under. We don't want to play by these rules. We want different rules. At that point, I actually feel pretty comfortable saying, well, you know what? Maybe no. Maybe I don't need to consider your point of view. If you want to actually destroy the neutral space itself, maybe I don't need to consider that. Maybe I don't need to look at things from your point of view and say, oh, well, no. All right? That's just how I feel about it. I think there's something deeply wrong here that I can't put my finger on.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Well, I mean, I think we've exhausted that topic, I guess. Do you want to take some questions from the audience, from the
I mean,
people?
we can keep
How do you want to do
we
it?
can keep going for a while, you know. I mean, I know that
Yeah.
like I'm not going to bail on EFAP guys, but they literally go until like 2 a.m. I can drop in anytime. And I will. Right after we're done, I'll probably head over there and spend like 3 hours with them. So I don't mind.
Yeah, exactly, guys. You're not getting rid of me that easy, okay? I'm gonna keep spreading my fucking propaganda to you until Dev kicks me out, I guess.
Your dirty socialist propaganda, even though you're not a socialist.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it going. But
well, keep in mind though that like in the Richard Wolff versus Destiny debate, Richard Wolff literally said socialism is when the government does stuff. So,
he did
maybe.
say that was a type of socialism. That's true. So.
Man, I know like that's used as like a joke, and then to hear it actually just said straight, it blew my mind. You know, it blew my mind to hear that.
Well, I mean, well, historically, I guess he's right. It's just a matter of like, okay, well, would we actually accept that definition? I guess, right? So, like, if like historically, there have definitely been socialist parties that have basically said like our version of socialism is when we redistribute a lot of wealth and create a lot of good government programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those programs are around to this day, and they're pretty effective, right? But at that point, it's like, okay, well, is socialism just when the government does some stuff, right? Because it's not the government doesn't do everything in any society, right? Like he even used that in that debate. He used the example of Portugal electing a social democratic party, and it's like, okay, well, is Portugal a socialist country, right? Like, is that the claim that's being made here? And that just seems a little bit indefensible as a claim. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember now. Okay. What were you gave a few reasons as to why academia is more left-leaning than not. Can you repeat those real quick, just so I have them fresh in my head?
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, we might imagine a space that's more open to like new ideas, a little bit less conservative in general, to be a little bit more, you could say left-leaning, but it seems like for the last, 1,000 years of relatively organized education, it seems like the academic environment has, made for an environment that is relatively open and free in thought, and that leads to sort of not contemporarily, but like relatively diverse opinion, or like opinion that's relatively outside the norm to be expressed a little bit more freely and openly than we would expect in modern sort of civil society. And that seems to have been the trend of education and educational institutions for quite a long time.
So that to put it in more practical terms, it means like it ends up means that you're questioning tradition, you're questioning normal hierarchies, and because it's more of an open inquiry kind of thing, and those are the established things that people take for granted, so you question those things basically.
Yeah, I mean, also part of the academic process, especially when you get into like the doctorate level, is like you have to come up with a new idea, right? You have to expand. Every dissertation that gets argued every single semester, after being granted your doctorate, is in theory an expansion or a replacement of that current field's knowledge, right? And so that happens, that process of creative destruction and expansion happens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times a year across the entire world. So I mean, it's the type of environment that tends to be a little bit more scientific in nature in terms of thought, right? In terms of better ideas replace bad old ideas, right? And that's probably a little bit more accepted in
It's
academia than in
you
normal
could say it's a
everyday.
bit more Darwinist, maybe.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's just the process of better ideas tend to better ideas or like subversive ideas tend to come come into those conversations a little bit more. I mean, this is where that professor that got in a lot of trouble for saying white genocide, right? Now, that guy was a dum dum in terms of how he framed what white genocide is. But typically, in the academic sense, what white genocide is a um, it's a movement to contextualize what being white actually means, right? And how like the history of white and whiteness has been used as a means by which to exclude other groups of people, right? And how like some groups are considered assimilated into being white and some are not, even though it seems like a very, very arbitrary classification. And so typically when someone says white genocide, what they're talking about is the idea of deconstructing whiteness and getting rid of the phrase and term whiteness because of the historical context of the phrase. Now, I can say everything that I just said, and most people would come to the conclusion of like, okay, that might actually make some sense, right? Maybe you don't agree, maybe you agree, maybe it makes some sense, maybe it doesn't. Um, but what we can probably agree on is that like a professor tweeting, I pray for white genocide for Christmas," is like an incredibly stupid and poor way to frame what is actually a pretty complex school of thought in academia. So,
Hmm.
you know. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of these academic ideas have they have branding problems for sure.
I don't agree, by the way. And to be fair, there is an academic orthodoxy as well, and I've also experienced it where professors did not like their their ideas challenged, especially if they were teaching their own book. Okay, general rule: if you're in a class and the professor's teaching his own book, never contradict the book. You will fail the class. But there's definitely like people who don't want to see. I don't think it's the majority of the reason why the school system is left leaning, but there's definitely part of it that there's just people who don't want to hear conservative opinions on campus. I think that's definitely true. It's not as big as some conservatives say that it is, but it's definitely part of the equation. Um,
Well, I mean,
However,
I don't know. I mean, just to respond to that, I mean, it depends on what you mean by like conservative opinion, right? So like,
mhm.
I agree that there's probably not a lot of tolerance for like I hate the gays on conservative campuses, right? And I don't think that that low tolerance is a bad thing because if we're talking about like purely like discriminatory thought, I think that that's a fair thing for in an academic environment for people to have a relatively low preference for.
Mhm.
However, at least in my experience in education and both in my sort of social science and sort of you know basically my more like academic, you could say like gender studies and sociology and philosophy type education, there's like a really, really high tolerance for ideas that would be considered conservative for those types of schools of thought. And in general, the class discussion wasn't exact. There were many conservatives that were perfectly comfortable participating in class discussions openly about whether it be things like gun control or like family structures or things like that, right? But obviously, if we're talking about like I think trans women are men and they're disgusting and they're mutilating their bodies. Yeah, there's not a lot of high tolerance for that because that's not quality discourse anyway, right? And I'm not particularly sad because that's not really a quality contribution to discourse that would lead to better ideas replacing worse ones anyway, right? So
Yeah,
that's kind of
the
how I
thing
view
is,
it.
if you actually believe, if you're somebody who fervently believes that trans women are just men and that's it, and there's no in between, there's no other option, they're just men. Like saying it the way that you just said it, there's like no idea to respond there. It's just a disgust response, and it's like, well, okay, you can feel disgust if you want, but you can't really reply to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that a lot
And,
of times when people say like free
well,
speech is being stifled on campus, they tend to mean like my dumb idea isn't really tolerated by my professor. It's like,
so
okay, there's a
so
difference between
it
those two
it
things.
it may be the case that you just went to a better school than I did, because I definitely had a lot more
Yeah.
professors who
I
swung
probably
from the
did
left, and they
because
were
I went to
quite
school
close
in
minded.
America.
So I had a fair number of professors, not all of them. The philosophy professors are usually pretty good, but literature and gender studies, they were almost always people who were very close-minded and definitely swinging from the left, and they did not tolerate, you know, a reasonable or a good faith non-leftist critique of their ideas, if that makes sense. But then again, I actually did go to one of the worst universities in Canada, so it could be the case that
Yeah,
they're just a
and
bunch of second-rate hacks, and that's how
yeah,
that
well,
school was.
it might also depend on like if you're it might depend on the subject, right? So creative
Mhm.
writing, I never took a creative writing course, right? That field might be fundamentally different, but at least in like, across a couple departments, the women's studies courses that I took, the sociology courses that I took, the philosophy courses that I took, obviously the economics and political science courses that I took, we're all fairly, you know, amenable to conservative thought and ideology. I mean, like people, people have gone. I've heard people go so far as to say that like economics and finance are like Marxist, education institutions and shit like that. And it's
Yeah,
like, dude,
as far
you've never taken a fucking collegiate finance or economics course if you think that it's like you're learning Marxism or some shit. That's just completely idiotic.
as far as I understand, because I mean, I only took like I think um, first year economics. I don't remember anything from
Yeah,
it, but like as far as I
that's
remember,
fair.
like Marx was talked about a bit, but not necessarily fondly.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, most of the time, what you'll see is quite exactly like what you'll see a lot of times is quite the opposite, which is that there's typically there's a lot more animosity for like socialist and like communist style teachings in
mhm,
economics than there is open acceptance. Now, you can find socialist and communist economics professors. Obviously, people like Richard Wolff exist, but like a mainstream economics education is not even like it's not even close to some sort of socialist propaganda, Marxist, school of
yeah,
thought nonsense.
yeah.
And you find that more in philosophy. But again, even in philosophy, in my experience, there was like a very there was very much a relative openness to discuss ideas that would be considered you know subversive, even in the context of an academic setting, right? So more conservative schools of thought. So
So what I brought this up because I wanted to pick your brain with an idea. It's not fully formed. I'm floating it around in my head. I've been doing a bunch of reading, and the idea is something like the reason that, at least here in Canada, for example, we have colleges and universities. University is higher education, it's where you get your degree, it is the literature, it is the business, it is the engineering, the economics. Then you have colleges. And I think colleges are equivalent to what the United States would call trade schools. You go to college to learn how to be a secretary, or how to be a plumber, or how to be a carpenter, or something like that, to work with your hands. All right. So those are what we call them here in Canada, is colleges and universities. Colleges are overwhelmingly filled with right-leaning students here in Canada. Universities overwhelmingly filled with left-leaning students. And I was trying to kind of figure this out because we talked a bit in the last time I streamed. I mentioned that the working class is generally more conservative on average, and that is why working class revolution almost never plays out the way that Marxists expect, because it is a conservative group of people that are revolting, not a progressive group. And I was trying to just I was mulling this over in my head. It's like, why is it that universities are more left leaning? And it might be because the style of learning attracts left leaning people. The idea that you're working with your brains and not with your hands. The idea that you're working in the realm of theory rather than in the realm of practical application. There might the
yeah,
left right distinction might be downstream from different methods of work and different methods of learning.
I don't know if that's true because I think the assumption that most working class people are conservative is probably wrong. At least based on the voting data that I've seen, it seems like most lower income people tend to vote for Democrats in America. I don't know what it's like up in Canada, but it seems like you can basically track the percentage of the vote people get based on their income. Like it seems like the lower income you are, the more likely you are to vote for a Democrat, and the higher income you are, the more likely you are to vote for a Republican. Which isn't to say that there's not overlap. Like maybe maybe 70% of people that make below 20 grand a year vote for Democrats, but there's still 30% of people that vote for Republicans, right? So obviously, you can't win an election with just wealthy people voting for you.
Right.
And so that's definitely true. But so I don't know if I agree with that, because I think that
Well,
most of the time it seems like the working class tend to, I think, vote for more liberal policies.
I'm not necessarily talking about Republicans or Democrats. I'm talking about like not even necessarily about economics. It's more like the philosophies of these two sides. The philosophies of conservatism, the philosophies of progressivism, because there is definitely this idea of a working class person who, because he's working class, he doesn't travel as much, he doesn't get as much exposure to the outside world. He has deeper connections to, say, his home or his family, and those are all, more conservative values. So I'm not necessarily talking about economics. There's probably there probably is the case that people who are, say, working class, because they're kind of feeling the squeeze right now, they'll vote for more redistributive policies. I like that makes sense, but I'm talking more about the philosophy of these two places rather than the voting of these two places. You can definitely have a conservative who is like, you know what, I'm voting Democrats right now because, man, I have no money, and it would be nice to have a little bit of money, and I'm working as hard as I can, and I can't get ahead. So there are definitely reasons for there to be the conservatives that vote for Democrats or liberals that vote for Republicans sometimes, because like the Republicans like to talk about, for example, they campaign a lot on rights, and sometimes that will appeal to a liberal for ideological reasons. So there's overlap, but I mean more the philosophies of these things and the ways of looking at the world, not necessarily the voting patterns.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think that um, in my experience, even in academia, like some subjects are very conservative, right? So
Like
in
STEM, yeah,
finance,
STEM seems to be a little bit more. I,
yeah, STEM maybe. I'm not really sure. I didn't. Most of the STEM people that I worked with in college were also pretty liberal and like left to center. But
I roomed with a
you
bunch
know,
of engineers, and everyone I met through engineering, they were all like right leaning.
engineering specifically, I could see that. It's a very male
Hmm.
dominated field, and so I could see that. But
It's also kind of
um,
work with your handsy too as well. So I think there's something here.
maybe.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
I
I
think
think
there's
that
an idea here.
I was gonna say, at least in finance, like finance is like an overwhelmingly conservative academic discipline in my experience, right? Like I think that I was without a doubt the farthest left person in my entire finance program, and I'm not exactly a socialist, right? So,
Hmm.
um, and uh, and that was true every year. So even the new students that came in, it's like still I was beating them in terms of how progressive I was, and economics was different. Economics had the full spectrum in my experience. Like we had very, very far right people economically speaking, and then we had very, very far left people economically speaking. There weren't like many socialists that studied economics in my school, but there were a few, I guess. But um, I don't know. I don't know. I hesitate to say that there's some like brain difference between like conservatives and liberals, but maybe there is. I just have to. I'd have
Oh,
to see
yeah.
the
I
difference.
don't mean brain difference necessarily.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that like you're born with some type of feeling and thought that you have, or like you're environmentally very young, you're predisposed to how you view certain things and how you might want to work and working with your hands and working with like your brain and stuff like that, and how
mm,
like that might tend you to being more liberal or conservative.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I don't mean to say that they're born that way, but I do think that there might be some kind of correlation between preferred types of work and view of the world. It's something like
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm saying. Like I think a lot of times when people say that like, oh, you were born gay or something like that, I think most people nowadays don't actually think that like there's like a gay gene. I think most people would just say that you're probably environmentally uh not predisposed, but like environmentally and based on your brain, there's a lot of correlates to these types of things, and that might predispose you to be like way more likely to be this certain way, right? And so, similarly, based on your based on how you're born, the environment you grow up in, and like the philosophy that you end up creating based on that environment, you might be a little bit more likely to I guess work in a trade versus in academia or in some like lower wage job or something like that, and then just go from there. And that might inform to some great extent your political ideology.
Maybe. I'm still
There
I'm
you go.
still I'm still mulling it over in my head, because what really got me thinking about this is, you know how whenever, let's say let's say you're like me and you're on Twitter way too much, okay, and you're arguing with a commie, and you're like, listen, I don't think Marx's ideas work, and I don't think that this revolution is going to happen or whatever it happens to be, and they say read theory. What read theory seems to mean, if you want to unpack that statement, read theory is it's not appealing to the real world, the practical effects of the theory. It's appealing to the the rational mind existing independent from the physical world, in a sense. That's what it's appealing to. It's appealing to the person who writes theory without ever having actually tested that theory, which is why they say, for example, that real communism or real socialism and real communism has never been tried, because the theory didn't work. And there's an attitude there that is like isolated from the universe almost, where it's like, okay, well, if the mind is truly the greatest faculty, and we are actually just disconnected spirits in a body, and the body is just a shell, well, then I should be able to like rationalistically order things. But then that mindset, even though reason's a very powerful faculty, that mindset leads to this idea that, well, we can just theorize, and the theorizing doesn't have to actually reflect anything in the real world, but we can still enforce that theory and then blame something else when things inevitably go wrong. And then meanwhile, I've been reading like the conservative responses to reason as the prime faculty of man. And their view is not necessarily anti-reason, it's not necessarily anti-science, it's not anti-rationality. It's the idea that you as a human, you're very limited. People have said, for example, there's only so many decisions you can make, good decisions you can make in a day before you basically run out of like, I guess, mental power or whatever it is. And then you start making poor decisions because you hit a fatigue point. So, and of course, being a human, you're also you're prone to mistakes. You get angry, you get sad, you can have your vision clouded for some reason. You are not the hyper rationalistic being that we all think that we are, and we all do think that we are, but we're not actually that thing. And so there is this idea within conservative philosophy that the reason that you rely on, for example, the wisdom of your culture is because that has been distilled down from millions of brains, and you are just one brain. And now that doesn't mean that the culture is correct. It may need correcting. You might be living in a new age where there are new ideas and there's new things in the outside world that you need to correct for. So it doesn't mean that it's always correct. But there seems to be some truth to the idea that everything around you has been built by other people who are just as smart as you are. And you shouldn't just expel that because you have a new theory about the way things should be run.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
That is just.
I mean, obviously.
I'm just like diarrheaing out a big something. It's a half-formed idea in my head that I don't quite know what to do with yet. But I think I think it might relate to styles of learning and how that might relate to political persuasion in certain fields.
Maybe it could. Anything's possible, Dev, as long as you put your mind to it.
Do I just sound like a fucking moron?
No, it's not. It's not that. I think obviously you just have to look. You'd have to look a lot deeper into surveying data and a lot of psychological. I mean, there's a lot of studies on. There's like political psychology as a field, which tries to answer a lot of the questions that seems like you just posed, and there's a lot of good stuff on that in general. Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to run that by you and see if it bounced around in your head a bit. But
I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I mean, obviously, conservatives have like a fundamentally different way that they view the world, right? Than liberals or progressives or whatever it is, socialists.
mhm.
You know, and to what extent that's informed on like there's a clear chicken and egg problem, right? So like to what extent that's informed on the uh how do I put it? Like to what extent that's informed by like how they work or what things they're interested in working on, or to what extent that their already preconceived notions of the world inform how they want to work. You know, that's kind of a big question. Um, so I'm not really sure. I don't know. I know that over time everyone tends to get more liberal, right? So that probably goes against that theory to some extent. But like, is it some sort of structural difference between certain professions and others? That's probably the better question. And I'm not really
Mm.
sure.
I think society trends more liberal over time, but I think individuals probably trend more conservative over time. I did a video on this. I looked at some data, and people don't necessarily change their political views as they get older, but when they do change them, they're more likely to move more rightward. And I don't know why
Well,
necessarily. Maybe just a process
maybe.
of a crystallization. It could be a process of experiencing a bit more. And I realized that like young people are liberal because they haven't really experienced much, and they're like, well, all these ideas are open. And then like once you fire an arrow 20 times, you realize, oh well, the target's over there, and so you can kind of hone in. You've tried things that don't work, and you kind of hone in on what does work. And I think that might be part of the reason why people become more conservative as they age. But I don't know.
I mean, it might just be that society progresses faster than individuals do, right?
Like, it could be
So,
that too. It could be that too.
you know, I mean, because everyone dies a conservative in some respects, right? So, I mean, it's always curious to think to yourself, what are what are the things that I'm gonna think when I'm 80 and my grandkids are gonna be like, grandpa, he's kind of fucking a conservative, It's like I wonder what those things are gonna be. Oh,
Yeah.
grandpa, he thinks this or that, and we just don't do that anymore. It's like, okay, I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
You young kids are weird as fuck,
What do you think people when you and I are like 80 and 90 and 100 years old? What do you think the teens are going to be fighting for? What will be the next social progress thing?
Um, I think veganism will become a lot more popular in the next 60 to 70 years.
Yeah.
And I think that it's not that I don't know if you'll be like an outcast if you eat meat in 60 or 70 years, but I think like a high enough proportion of the population will be vegan or vegetarian that I think that it will it'll become like a real issue, I think, to a lot of people. Like I think that'll be a part that'll be like a much bigger movement to like stop eating meat. And I
So
think that
so
could be a thing.
you and I will be like grilling up steaks, and then there'll be like the young people of the family. They'll be like, how could those guys over there be so meatist? We'll be
Well,
meatists.
right, like I could totally see like my grandkids or something being like, "Man, why the fuck does grandpa eat meat? Like that's just what's going on?" Right? I mean, I could see that being like a much bigger thing than it is now basically. Like I don't know if I don't think 80% of society is going to be vegan by the time I die, but maybe like I could see like 30% or something, like a really large minority of people.
Right.
So I could see that happening. Um, Other than that, I'm not really sure. It's really hard to predict social movements, but it seems like veganism is becoming like way, way, way more like adopted.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's always the joke answers, like the maps will win out or something, but like that those are kind
yeah.
of jokey.
Oh,
They're
people are
funny.
gonna fucking marry your dog and shit, and it's like, no, dude, don't be a dumbass. Like that's probably not gonna happen. I think veganism is realistic. I think that I I wonder where marriage will go. Like, I wonder if marriage will just like become a much broader thing. Like, I wonder if it'll
Mm.
be like, oh, you can marry multiple people, or maybe you can marry like multiple people. Like, I could see that becoming a thing where it's like polyamory and polygamy might become like more mainstream, which might be against like a lot of people's beliefs and stuff like that. I could see something like that happening, or like maybe marriage just isn't even a thing. Like marriage is seen as like, oh, that's like
Uh,
who gets
I,
married anymore, Maybe
I don't know
something like
about that.
that.
I do think like there's enough people that I think that are just predisposed to monogamy that I think you'll still have marriage. I think that's gonna last
Well,
for a very long time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I wasn't thinking predisposed to monogamy. I was thinking more like people that just didn't want to be monogamous, right? So like I
Oh,
think that
okay.
that'll become I think like I think non-monogamous relationships are going to become a lot more popular in the next 60 or 70 years.
Maybe.
Because
Maybe.
they seem to be becoming like it seems like a very very like it's pretty normal to like know someone that is not in a monogamous relationship. You know what I mean? Like not just like
No,
online.
I
You know?
don't know anybody in real life that's like that. Maybe we're just living in like,
Really?
are you living in like Southern California or something?
No, I mean I'm in a big city, so I mean that's probably why. But uh, I think
Nope,
something
not a
like
single
or
person
like
here.
where do you live, Dev? What's
In
your
the middle of
address?
fucking nowhere, Canada.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I live in a big city with all these liberal, godless heathens, I guess.
Hmm.
Oh, that's one. Maybe religion. I think religion could be much more constricted in the next 60 or 70 years. Like people tend to become. It seems like over time society becomes a lot more secular and agnostic. So I think right now, like 20% of people in America are not religious or affiliated with any religion, and so maybe by 2070 that number is like 50%. I could see something like
Okay,
that happening.
there is a guy who he's a nice guy, but I disagree with him. He's an ANCAP. He's been bugging. He's in every chat asking us to watch an ANCAP video.
Yeah, is it Isaac Clarke? That guy's
Yeah,
like he's coming for us. He wants us to talk about when are you guys going to talk about ANCAP? And I don't know. I feel
he
like in our first conversation we talked about anarchism a little bit,
a little bit.
if I'm not mistaken.
Oh
By the
god,
way,
dude,
Isaac
this is a
Clarke.
28-minute
Uh,
video, dude. Like we can't watch this. Like, okay, I have to go in maximum 40 minutes. I have to go. Okay, so we
yeah,
cannot watch a
I
28
mean
minute video, dude. I'm
Isaac
sorry.
Clarke. I would take your opinion a lot more seriously if you made an account on econoboi.com/live and told me to watch that video there.
I mean, if you
But
wanted to do it another time, you and I could watch it then. Because here's the thing: like, I'm not an ANCAP. I'm not necessarily a libertarian, though. I have some sympathy towards libertarian positions. Insofar as like personal freedom is involved. Um, not so much the economics of it, but personal freedom. Yes, I understand the libertarian position. I've read a fair amount of ANCAP stuff, but I just don't necessarily agree with it. It's not my bag.
yeah,
I like states. Thank you very much. I don't trust them, but I like them.
yeah. I mean, I think that I think last username, he gives a pretty good. He's a ANCAP. He gives a pretty good argument for anarcho-capitalism. I just think that like it just I don't know. It just doesn't fucking work for me. It seems dumb, and it seems like there'd be a lot of like violence and problems. Now I know that ANCAPs obviously when you talk to them, it's like, well, no, like we've constructed a world without more violence that is also somehow without a monopoly of violence from the state. And it's like I understand we can imagine a society that doesn't have a state, that also doesn't have problems with like warring factions and shit. But it just it just seems like in societies where states don't really function very well, it doesn't seem like those societies have less violence, right? Like
Yeah.
because it seems like a lot of ANCAPs are of the opinion that like if the state just didn't exist, we'd be fine, right? And it's like I just don't know if that's true, right? That seems
I've
like you'd have a lot of problems with factionalism and people just fucking stealing your shit and blowing shit up and whatnot. So
so from what I understand, the ANCAP reply to that argument is something along the lines of, well, in a high trust society, that won't happen because people will be more they'll distrust their neighbors less. It's a high trust society. And then you ask them, well, how do you get a high trust society? It's like, oh, well, one easy way is to get rid of all the minorities. It's like, oh, okay. Is that how you do it?
oh, there's like a weird racial component or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is that anarchism functions if your society's high trust. So if everyone is the
Yeah.
same demographic, they're more likely to trust each other.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no othering. Which yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of seems to be true. Like in reality, that if you have a more diverse society, that might come with some tensions. It just seems to be the case.
I don't
So
know that ethnically homogenous German Gaelic society from the Middle Ages,
mhm.
known for their peacefulness and not barbarism at all, right? that, uh, yeah. that
yeah.
racially homogenous continent known as Africa, they're very well known for their lack of violence in society. Like, no, I mean that's
This
just
is why I don't
look,
agree with the I don't agree
yeah. I
with
mean,
their
I
idea.
think when people think homogeneity stops, you know, gets rid of violence in society, it's like no. I think that people say humans are tribal. That's why diversity doesn't work. And it's like no. Humans are tribal. That's why we'll find any excuse to hate each other, right?
Yes.
Like even
Yeah.
if we all look white, even if we're all Christian, even if we're all fucking, whatever it might be, straight, right? I mean, we're gonna find ways to divide each other. That's where that going back to the conversation on whiteness, right? Where like it seems like such an arbitrary category a lot of times. Where like if you ask someone, you know, are Greeks white? Most people would say yes, right? But then if you ask them, are Turkish people white? They'd usually say no, even though they're right next to each other and they look the exact same, right? Well,
Yeah.
what about
Yeah.
Chileans, right? Chileans consider themselves white. If you look up demographics of Chile, it'll say like 80% white. Same thing in Uruguay. Same thing in Argentina. Are
Hmm.
those people white? Most people would say no because they speak Spanish, right? It's like, okay, well, clearly the category of white is this weird arbitrary amalgam of what we imagine whiteness is. But
Hmm.
it seems like if we had a society even with only those people, there'd still be a lot of reasons to separate us based on these weird arbitrary lines. So, yeah.
Yeah. I for the most part agree with that. Like even if we had the white ethno state, the glorious white ethno state, we'd be finding reasons to hate on each other for some reason or another. It wouldn't remove the factionalism because humans we're just like that. We're just like that.
Exactly. We all want to hate each other for whatever reason we can think of.
Yep. So we were supposed. Here's the thing. It's like I said at the start. I like talking to you because even though we might disagree on some things, it's generally a pretty good conversation. So we got completely lost in talking about everything else except for what we're supposed to talk about, which was Austrian economics.
I'm okay with that.
Are you? I mean, we can keep going a little bit
Yeah.
more if you want. If you
Yeah,
actually
let's
want
do
to
it, bud.
like,
Whatever you want to talk about. This is
okay.
your show, Dev.
Well, it's on your channel
I'm just a
too, right?
guest.
It's on your. Well,
It
you're on
is,
your
but
channel.
it is, but my chat, they'll do whatever I say,
Oh, will
So
they?
they're basically my puppets,
My
So
chat likes to fight with me on everything. I'm okay with that though. I'm a very free speech oriented community.
mm.
People who disagree
No,
with me,
yeah.
they're very welcome.
I've told people in my chat that if they express disagreement, I'll ban them. So they're all they're on their toes. So
So, you said last time we spoke you didn't know much about the Austrian School of Economics.
I don't really. I mean, it's not a big. I think that in most economics education, you don't tend to have an incredibly philosophically grounded education or like historically grounded education. It's a lot of modeling and math and statistics,
Hmm.
and that was pretty much my education as well.
Right. So, I know a little bit, but not nearly enough to call myself an Austrian, and I don't think I agree with them on everything anyway. So, we can be Wikipedia warriors again, real quick. And here we go. The Austrian school is a school of economic thought that is based on methodological individualism, the concept that social phenomena results exclusively from the motivations and actions of individuals. From what I understand about methodological individualism, it's basically the idea that you don't necessarily have to care about demographics so much, because demographics are just made up of people. Individual people will make certain choices. And so you can kind of get a handle on economic activity by looking at what individuals do.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I think the foundation of Austrian economics was, um, what was his name? Miner, I want to say, Menger. I want to say
Oh, Menger.
Menger. He was a journalist, and it seemed like a lot of the interactions he saw in like day-to-day marketplaces didn't seem to map on to what economists of the time were saying about the economy. And so he basically wrote this book that tried to blow up the field of economics. And he, I mean, a lot of the thought process, right? Like, so economies are made up of individuals, and individual actions can extrapolate into like broader systemic action, and that's really how we should try and view these interactions. It's kind of true. But it's it kind of neglects I suppose it neglects the role of like broader superstructures in society and how those things can affect individuals as well. So it's it's an interesting thing to think about.
Right, right. So I recall reading at some point, somewhere along the line, some article where they basically said that you can tell if your ideas are successful if they stop being part of a school and just become the mainstream of whatever field it is you're working in. And this person, I forget where this is from, but he said that was the case with the Austrian school because they had a number of innovations that were new at the time to economics that have since left the Austrian school and just become a part of mainstream economics. And so the list of those things, where is it? Here we go. Among the theoretical contributions of the early years of the Austrian school are the subjective theory of value, marginalism in price theory, and the formation of the economic calculation problem. So basically these things started off as Austrian innovations, and they're now basically accepted in mainstream econ. Does that sound about right?
I don't know to what extent marginalism is accepted in mainstream econ. I'd have to learn a little bit more about it. But I think that in general, there's probably a lot of ideas from Austrian economics that had been accepted. Like I think that their conceptualization of opportunity cost and like kind of the original foundations of like time value of money, stuff like that, I think originated in some part with the Austrian school, and so stuff like that has been pretty mainstream accepted for a long time. And so yeah, I can recognize that. I think that however, I would say that most of like mainstream economics today in a macro perspective is pretty Keynesian, right? It seems like people tend to not, they don't really view recessions as like a good thing, I guess, right? So like recessions aren't just like
like a necessary thing. Yeah.
Right. It's like no, it's like you can you can have creative destruction while at the same time ensuring that like average people don't get screwed over by that, right? So that's where.
So I know what creative destruction is because Adam defined it for me once long ago. But for the sake of the chat, can you define creative destruction?
As far as I'm aware, creative destruction is pretty much just the idea that you pretty much have like good ideas getting replaced by bad old ideas. In the case of like a business context, it would be good businesses replacing old bad businesses, right? And that ends up with you end up with a net better society because you've got this competitive process for forming businesses and keeping them around, or forming ideas and keeping those ideas in the mainstream.
Yeah. So when it comes to technology, that's like the horses were replaced by cars argument, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or people being replaced by robots, or whatever it might be. Yeah, exactly.
Where even though old industries are destroyed, new industries are created. So creative destruction.
Yeah, more productive, etc. Yeah.
From what I understand about marginalism, because this is something that I've looked into before, it was basically their attempt to answer the water diamonds paradox, which is why is it that diamonds are worth so much more than water, even though water is much more essential to human life?
Say that again.
Why is it that diamonds are worth more than water when water is essential to human life and diamonds are not?
Yeah, well, it's a lot more water than there are diamonds, right?
Yes.
So I mean, that would kind of explain that.
So the idea of marginalism, well, see, that wasn't necessarily self-evident 100 years ago, but the idea of marginalism is, rather than relying on something like the labor theory of value, for example, it's this idea that the last, what is it? How do they formulate it? The last use of a good determines how much you value the next use of the good. So the example that they like to give is cake. So if you're hungry, you're going to eat one piece of cake and it's going to taste really good. You're going to get so much enjoyment out of it. You eat the second piece of cake, you'll still get some enjoyment, but you'll get less enjoyment out of it than the first piece because you've now had some already, so you get a little bit less enjoyment. And eventually you hit a point where you stop getting enjoyment from the cake entirely, even though it's the exact same thing. So I think
Yeah.
the theory goes something like you have a bunch of different desires, and as they are satiated, the way that you value the things economically will change.
Yeah, I mean that's just diminishing marginal utility, basically, right? So I mean, obviously, if you've got whatever, if you've got one car, you're gonna really love it and appreciate it. It's the only one you've got. If you've got two, it's gonna be nice. If you got three, it's like, where am I gonna park the rest? And eventually, you just have no use for these infinite number of cars that are coming out. And if anything, you might have disutility from them, right? And that's a that type of concept has been around in economics for I guess a while. I don't know if the Austrians are the ones that originally came up with it, but uh, that's definitely a relatively fundamental assumption in a lot of mainstream sort of economic modeling, for sure.
Right. I know more of the history than the economics of the Austrians. So, for example, I know that there was a lot of highly publicized debates between them and the socialists of the era, and they basically developed
Yep.
marginalism as a way um to to go after what the socialists. I know the socialists didn't come up with the labor theory of value, but they used like a version of it. I just don't know what it was called, but they basically came up with the idea of marginal utility to have an answer to the labor theory of value, where it's like, okay, well, if things are just their labor plus the cost of the materials, why is it that certain things are priced this way? And it's like, oh, well, it's actually because of the use of those things in the end. So I think marginalism was like a reply to the labor theory of value. And a lot of the
Maybe.
stuff that I've seen the Austrians do and formulate, it's almost like it's in response to Marxist economists who they're debating, because, like, Hayek had some very public debates, and Mises had some very public debates with some of these people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Marxism and sort of like mainstream economic thought of socialism came about around the same time that the Austrian school was being developed as well. So it doesn't surprise me that they were very like starkly competing, because they were both trying to capture the mainstream of economics, basically.
Right. And I also understand. So, for example, I've read Hayek's Road to Serfdom. It's more a political text than an economic text, but the overall feeling that I get of the Austrians is that they're highly skeptical of government involvement in the economy. And considering that the times in which they were writing, I understand it. I understand it very well, because look at the biggest governments around them, because they were in the UK, and they had Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. They had Franco. It wasn't yet Francoist Spain, but Spain was on the way to becoming fascist. They had the USSR. You had all of these command economies in Europe, and here these guys are hanging out. Hayek left Austria to go to move to Britain, because he didn't want to live under Nazi rule. So they're writing this stuff in a world where large centralized governments they're totalitarian and they're tyrannical, and in some ways they're using the power of the economy to commit these evils.
Yeah.
So I guess my point of view is, like, I understand why they're so skeptical of government involvement in the economy. It seems like they had good reason to be, at least at that time.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I think that there's uh economics, just like any other sort of social science or process, in theory uses the scientific method and applies it in such a way that we can constantly evolve it to where it hopefully maps better onto reality than we previously thought it would. And so I think that that's why you see mainstream economics takes some stuff from many different schools and tries to essentially just there's difference, like you said, between the schools of thought of economics and like what we actually teach in economics, right? Because
Hmm.
it doesn't always it's not always the case that the different schools of thought are perfectly mapped onto reality. So you just try to take from them and do as best you can from there.
Right. Yes. Um, the problem, though, is like I've read the political stuff, but not necessarily the economic stuff, and you don't know much, at least from that's what you said about about the actual like opinions of the Austrian school. But you did say, at least privately, you did say that you wanted to talk about free market economics because a lot of Austrian stuff does just kind of boil down to like free market principles.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that if a lot of times people use Austrian as synonymous with like ANCAP or libertarian or just like someone that generally believes in a like a very anti-government type stance in the economy. Now, that's not necessarily always true, but it kind of is just based on the implications of the teachings of the Austrian school. And in general, I think that that's where you end up with a lot of problems, right? I mean, obviously, there's quite a it's quite a useful role of government in market economics in general.
I I I I do know that there was a split in the school, and because Hayek he did say that there should be some kind of a social safety net in a sufficiently wealthy society. Um, he believed that net should be at
Wow.
least somewhat restricted, but it shouldn't be pure free market, absolutely no government involvement. I think Milton Friedman, he was at least on the edge of this kind of thought as well, and he kind of believes some of the same things. And then of course you have the crazier ones who ended up becoming the ANCAPs, and in my opinion they're fucking
Yeah,
nuts.
Milton Friedman's son, David Friedman. Yeah,
Is he a crazy one? I don't know who that is. I don't know anything about David Friedman.
Milton Friedman's son is a well-known ANCAP. Yeah, he took his dad's ideas and kind of multiplied them by 100.
I've read a little bit of Milton Friedman, and I mean, I people on the left like to characterize him as a fucking Nazi because he helped out Argentina's government at some point in his life. But
Uh,
in
I don't
terms
know
of
about that. Yeah,
in
yeah.
terms of the econ, it doesn't seem that bad. How much do you know about Friedman?
I mean, I know he was relatively against government involvement. I can't recall what he won the Nobel Prize for, and I also believe that I think he was actually relatively in favor of UBI, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, I'm not too sure.
Hmm. So, since we're basically going to have to move towards more conversation about the principles of the free market, what is your stance on the free marketeers in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is where, again, if you want to have the most well-rounded economic view, I think that this is where you would probably start with the idea that, um, the free market's probably pretty good. However, the free market probably isn't the best at everything at all times, right? And that there's room
Right.
for government, government intervention to actually oftentimes make the market uh, work more effectively than without government intervention. And there's also room for the government to obviate the need for market economics in some cases, right? Obviously, when we start talking about like defense, right? Like, would society be better if it was only private defense contractors? Probably not, right? It's probably a good thing that we have a central body that determines, um, you know, basically determines how we allocate the resource of defense. So that's, to me, that's where I think certain markets just they don't really make a lot of sense to be market organized at all.
Here, Isaac, how about this? We will make time to watch the video on another stream, okay?
Yeah, Isaac, shut the heck up. We're sick of you. And guess what? We're never gonna watch it on stream.
Oh, we're not?
We're not. Fuck you, Isaac. All right.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. We might watch it on stream. I don't know. I have to just plan for it.
Well, we can. I mean, as long as you're interested in having another stream someday, we can always do it then. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, why
Um,
not? And capitalism. There you go.
sure, sure. Hold on, you're still here, Dev. Christ, you really don't understand EFAP. What do you mean? I don't understand EFAP. I understand that they go forever, and I can chop in a little bit later, right?
There's ever a man that would understand EFAP. It's short, fat otaku, okay? Come on. I don't know what EFAP is. So
I will probably have to go relatively soon. I do
no
think that
problem.
like the in terms of the whole free market thing. Like, yeah, there are some times, like I guess natural monopolies is one instance in which, well, if there's a natural monopoly, maybe we should ensure that people actually have more access to the thing. You know, there are some instances where, like, if you're going to die, so healthcare is the obvious example. If you're going to die without it, maybe we should make it a bit more accessible. And it's not it because not everything is economics. There's also like morality to it. So
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think uh, yeah, in general, I would agree with that. I think that oftentimes ANCAPs would make the claim that natural monopolies just don't exist, right? Um, so that's where you end up in that debate. But I think there's some examples of natural monopolies certainly existing, and I think what people misunderstand is that oftentimes natural monopoly doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, now there's a monopoly because of the market, right? It just natural monopoly just tends to mean that there's a tendency towards like ever greater concentration of a market, right? So you might have a market that's like a natural monopoly, but that doesn't mean that there's literally a monopoly. It just means that there might not there might be a role for government regulation to either ensure competition or to um, make regulate their pricing schemes to such an extent that they don't take advantage of consumers.
right. I think that was actually Hayek's most famous quote was regulation for competition. So he wasn't like a pure free marketeer. He believed that there's a lot of areas where the government should just not get involved, let people do what they're going to do. But then there's some areas where the government needs to come in and actually ensure that the market functions because sometimes markets themselves just don't function.
Yeah, I mean, pollution's a classic example where like you probably the purely just the free market probably won't solve for pollution, right? You probably need the government to come in and either regulate or provide some subsidies for other industries, just something in order to alleviate the amount of pollution in the economy in general, right? Just depends. So
Yeah, you could have company A and company B, and then company B pollutes the river, and then a town downstream dies, and then as a result of that, people stop buying their products and go to their competitors, and then the free market works, but people have died, and maybe we can get to that step before people die.
yeah. Well, there's also the problem of like localized problems, right? So like that's why pollution's a classic example of externalities because if you got like this company that's an international company, but their location of production is just one area. Yeah, maybe the people in that area don't buy their products. Maybe they're too poor to, right? Or maybe they just don't want to because they're polluting the river. But everyone else is free to buy their products without worrying about the fact that they're polluting this one town, right? And so that's where that's why pollution fundamentally is kind of a problem, is because I don't feel the effects of that guy's water being poisoned because I live in the town over, right? And I just get the cheap consumer products or like whatever I'm buying from that company. And so that's a bit of a problem.
Isaac says pollution is against the NAP. That it might be, but who's going to
Oh my
enforce
God.
the NAP?
Isaac, don't do this, Isaac.
Who's going to enforce the NAP? That I like the NAP as a concept, but you have to have somebody enforce it.
This
You
is
have to have
literally the
somebody enforce
guy.
it.
Someone posted a meme in one of my replies, and it was like, some ANCAP was like arguing against speed limits. They're like, I don't believe in speed limits. They're fucking bullshit. I'm against that, right? And they never do anything to help people, right? And then some guy replied, well, what if someone drives like 1,000 miles an hour and kills a family of four because of oh Christ, I don't even think it was speed limits. I think it was drunk driving that he was against, like the law against. He's like, what about what if a drunk driver kills a family of four or something like that? Racing down the road or whatever. And he goes, that is oh my God, I'm such an idiot. It wasn't that. I'm now remembering fully what it is. It gets even worse. It wasn't drunk driving. It was street racing. And so he's like, there should be no law against street racing. And then the guy says, what if a street race leads to a family of four getting killed? And he goes, his response was, that's street crashing, which I'm very much against. It's like, you fucking dumbass. I mean, come on, dude. Obviously, I mean,
well, keep in mind,
really?
If your economic philosophy revolves around the idea that everyone is always making the most rational decision all the time, that's actually a perfectly reasonable response. The problem is people don't make rational decisions all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, pollution is against the NAP is I mean, I'll be honest, Isaac, that's definitely a pretty dumb response to the idea of pollution being a problem.
Well,
But I love you and support you, Isaac, in your journeys.
but see, I can actually link that back to what I was saying before, though, when I was talking about how you only have one brain and a limited number of good decisions to make every day, and how you might need to rely on the the generalized wealth of all of the thought processes that happened before you came along in society.
Yep. There you go. Is that a
So
good note to leave it on? Dev?
it seems like the Austrian school and the conservatives are actually at odds with each other. Ho 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 ho
My
ho.
goodness. Don't tell the Austrians
So what are
or
you
the
doing next?
conservatives.
I'm off. I'm getting off my channel and going on EFAP. What are you doing after me? What's
I
your
think we're gonna
plans?
talk. I'm gonna hang out with Chad a little bit, and then I'm probably gonna get off. I didn't expect this to go so long. It was a
Oh,
fun
I'm sorry,
time.
man. I'm sorry about that.
Um, no, you're good. You're good. And after this, we're gonna. I was maybe gonna react to a video, but probably just save that for later. Hang out with Chad for 10 or 20 minutes, and then I'm going to get some food. I'm hungry. Gonna get some
I
Taco Bell probably.
I had chicken nuggets before we started. I actually had chicken
Oh.
nuggets. You know what? I almost didn't do this today because my mic arm broke. Okay, so here I'll give you the TLDR since I gotta go in a minute. Okay, so about 9 months ago my table broke. All right, the desk that had the monitors and the mic arm attached to it that broke, and I was like, okay, so I propped the table up with some extra legs underneath it. I just kind of shoved them in there, and then something happened when the table broke that also kind of damaged the mic arm. And what ended up happening was finally the mic arm itself it it snapped and then also broke the side of the table that it was attached to. So the mic arm's fucked, the table's fucked. And I'm just like, well, it's still holding the monitors up. So I could just drill a hole and then just I'll throw out the actual clip, the clamp, and I'll just rip that off the arm, and then I'll drill a hole and shove the pin through the clamp, the pin from the clamp through the desk if I drill the hole. And then I realize that it's a completely arbitrary size that doesn't really exist in terms of drill bits. So hold on, let me just calculate this out, okay? Okay, so have you ever heard of a 1930 seconds drill bit? Not like 19/32 of an inch.
I don't. I don't think so.
So, for some reason, that was the arbitrary size that this company uses for all of its various pins that hold all of its various arms together. Because you can get a bunch of different arms from this company that all kind of lock
Nice.
together. Well, it's you have to get a 19/32 drill bit. So not like half, not like 5/8, not 9/16, 19/32.
Yeah,
So
I think that was one thing that if people are curious, I think that was one thing that the Hoover administration actually did that wasn't like totally awful for the economy, which was his administration standardized screws. That was one of the
oh,
things, and I think
nice.
outlets as well. Where like
Yeah.
now so now instead of having a billion different like screws and also tools to screw those screws, there's like a set of maybe a dozen different screws and like ways to screw them. And I think the same with outlets. Like it's nice that all the outlets are like the same thing, right? And I hope that happens soon with electric cars as well. I think eventually electric cars will probably have like a standardized plug-in. That way, there's like Tesla charging stations, but if you have a fucking a Nissan or something, you can't charge on those. It's like, okay, well,
Listen,
hopefully
listen.
they'll standardize eventually.
That is government overreach, sir.
That's true. That's true. It's authoritarian
Anyway, I managed
fundamentally.
to. I use a 9 by. I use an 9/16. I drilled it. I sanded it down. I shoved it through. It works. I'm able to record again. I know I didn't do any videos recently, guys, but I'm able to record again. So I'm back. So yeah, if you want to schedule something a few weeks down the road, we could always do some more if you like. I enjoy talking to you. This is a lot of fun.
Let's do it. It was a fun time.
And you know what? We should also play more Civ. We should get Taftage again. And play more
Civ.
Civ.
To play some Civ. That'll be fun. I think she and I are going to talk soon about something. I can't recall what, but that'll be fun. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, for Dev's audience, I'm addressing you directly. If you want to learn something, come on over to my chat. Come on over to Econoboi YouTube. It'll be a fun time.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. Okay. It's good. It's good talking to you again.
Sure. It was fun, bud. I'll talk to you later.
See ya. And there we go. We're done, guys. I'm going to take 5-10 minutes, and I'll see you over on EFAP. Don't worry. The monetization thing will be fixed up. It'll be fixed up before you know it, I'm sure. See you later, guys. I love you.